Hey everybody, it's JJ and we're back again for another ASUS PC DIY live stream. And today we're going to be talking all about motherboards. Today's launch is going to be all around the X870 based platform, so specifically the X870E as well as the X870 based series of motherboards. And as always, ASUS is super excited to be at the forefront of the industry to be able to offer a comprehensive lineup for those of you looking to build your system around the latest generation Ryzen series CPUs, whether that's going to be, of course, the current 7000 series or, of course, the latest 9000 series that recently launched. So we're going to be actually talking about 5 different series of motherboards today, from the actual flagship series with our ROG to ROG STRIX to TUF Gaming, as well as our Prime series, which I've got right here next to me, and also our ProArt series of motherboards. So all the way around, regardless, I think, of your budget, the features, functions, and specifications that you're looking for, there's going to be a board for you. And we're even going to go ahead and give you a little bit of that first look preview at the upcoming refresh for the mini ITX-based motherboard with the ROG STRIX X870i-A gaming motherboard. So those of you that are super excited about building a small form factor gaming build are also going to get covered in this stream. So from top to bottom, we're going to be talking about features, functions, specifications, what are the difference between different series, different models, and ultimately all the great things that we're doing to be able to provide you a better and simpler and overall a just better PC DIY experience when it comes to building your system if you're going to be utilizing an ASUS PC DIY board. So let's see who we have joining us with the stream today. We've got a little bit of everybody. We've got Michelle joining us. Fantastic. We've got Prickly Peppy joining us as well. Fantastic to have you here. We've got Koala20 joining us. Thank you so much for joining us here on the stream. Somebody asking about Q&A available in this live stream. Feel free. So definitely, I think the way that I have it structured, as we normally do within these live streams, I try to fill in, I think, the majority of questions that probably you guys are going to have. But if you do have questions as we're going through different boards or different features, feel free to go ahead and drop them in the chat, and we'll do our best to go ahead and make sure that we can respond to you. Some of our ASUS teammates also are actually in the comments in the chat, so you might see them actually responding to that as well. We're also going to drop commentary and links down in the actual chat as well to communities like our PC DIY group, which is a fantastic space to be able to get in touch not only with us, but with our passionate members of the PC DIY community that are using ASUS products. They can also give you more insight in terms of features, functions, build insights, and a whole lot more. So I'm always a big advocate of making sure to check out our PC DIY community. So let's lastly see who else we got here. Top 3 Entertainment, the motherboard matches you're revered. Yeah, I haven't shaved. It's been a pretty busy couple of weeks for me, so I haven't had the opportunity to shave, so just a little bit different. And I would say, yes, there's a little bit matching going on here for maybe the Prime series as well as the white themed ROG Strix -A board. So we've got 2 more people that will say hi to. We got Brian. Hello, fantastic. Thank you for joining us here on the stream. And let's see who else. We've got one more. Oh, interesting. Somebody's asking, is the Ryzen 3 ARGB Extreme AI included in today's release? We'll touch on it a little bit as far as actually some of the recommendations for the latest generation AIOs that we recommend kind of pairing with the motherboards towards the end of the live stream. But we're actually going to have a dedicated live stream on the Ryzen 3 Extreme. That is going to be our new flagship offering. It takes already the performance that we have with the current generation Ryzen and takes it to a whole nother level with quite a number of enhancements, everything from the cold plate to new fans and a whole lot more. So make sure to keep it tuned to the PC DIY community as well as to the YouTube channel for those upcoming live streams and videos. All right, let's get ready to go ahead and jump into this. So I think first and foremost, what we want to go ahead and do is just quickly touch on a little bit of an introduction to the actual X870E and the X870 based chipset. So for the most part, for the majority of you, should probably be familiar with the fact of what these chipsets are in terms of their kind of base support. So in this respect, we are talking about an AM5 platform. So of course, this is going to be for the latest generation AMD based CPUs. So Ryzen 7000 series and Ryzen 9000 series. So we're going to go ahead and bring up a little something here for you guys. Give me 1 second. And again, hopefully everybody that lets me know that audio is sounding good on their side, that would be appreciated. Make sure, but I think our team let me know that we're coming through okay. So we should be all right. So what we're going to bring up right here is going to be what is called a block diagram. This helps to give us a little bit of kind of insight in terms of looking at a high level what the actual chipset is going to be providing us, right? Now, for many of you, I'd love to know in the chat, what system are you running on? What's the platform you're running on? Are you running on X570, B550, B450, B350? Are you running on X299, right? What is the platform you're coming on? Because this is important in terms of helping you understand is what is going to be some of the of base technology and specifications you're going to get as you come to the new platform. Now we're going to talk about all the individual board specs, but this helps to give you a good foundation. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at this right here. All right, so as we take a look right here at the actual platform and the block diagram, we can see, of course, we've got AM5 CPU support. Now, this is going to support all of the current Ryzen 7000 series CPUs, as well as, of course, also going to support the Ryzen 9000 series of CPUs. It's also important to note that AMD has already gone ahead and committed support for essentially next generation base refreshes on this same platform. So you will actually see additional CPUs come out in the future that will be able to run on these same exact motherboards. Now, this is a full transition from DDR4 to DDR5, so all of these motherboards will only support DDR5 base memory. So if you're running an older base platform and you're still utilizing DDR4 memory, you're going to need to make that transition. But DDR5 memory is going to be offering you greater efficiency, greater bandwidth, higher densities. Overall, it's going to help you to maximize the performance of these CPUs. So it is ultimately going to be a positive thing, but it is something you have to be mindful of if you're going to be transitioning from an older platform where sometimes you might have been able to roll over your memory. Take, for instance, if you were on maybe B350 and then maybe you moved over to B550, take, for instance, you could have rolled over your memory. Now we are going to have PCI Express Gen 5 support and PCI Express Gen 4 support. And actually for Gen 5, one of the really great things that we're actually supporting is going to be a PCI Express Gen 5 for both the M.2 SSD as well as for the primary PCI Express slot. Now, currently, there's no graphics card that utilize PCI Express Gen 5, but for the M.2 base SSDs, this allows you to have the fastest performance possible, as well as also helps to align for the latest generation of direct storage, which for gamers out there can really help to notably improve the performance experience. And it's going to be an exciting technology as more games come to market with this. Now, beyond that, of course, we're going to have some other kind of key things that are baked in that are generally going to see, and we're going to talk about kind of the minimum set of specifications that you're going to have on these AM5 based motherboards in a moment. But rounding things out, you can see here that Chipset is going to be offering you PCI Express Gen 4, 20 gigabits, 10 gigabits. You're still also going to get SATA support in there. You'll also note that compared to older AMD-based CPUs, where generally you had kind of specific models like the APUs that had Ryzen integrated graphics, the newer CPUs also now natively integrate graphics core support. So for troubleshooting or for sometimes maybe first getting up your build before you have your discrete graphics card installed, that is also going to be a nice addition that you're going to have. So that gives us an overall base in terms of what we're going to have for the X870 base platform. Now, I want to give, lastly, before we go over into the minimum set of specifications that we're going to have when we take a look at all of the ASUS motherboards that we're going to talk about today, I do want to give a little bit of a comparison just to help us understand some of the differences in regards to the current chipsets that we have. So let me go ahead and bring up one more slide for you guys here. And I'll take a look here in a moment and see if we have any quick questions. So give me one sec and we'll bring that up here. So all right, so this is going to be a specification chart, and this will help us kind of get a little bit of a sense of what's going to be going on in terms of how do you kind of compare this to the current set of chipsets. So you can see right here, here's pretty much everything that you have on the AM5 lineup. So you've got X870E, you got X870, B850 and B840. Neither one of these have actually been released, so they'll be coming later. So as of right now, you would be, if you're looking for a kind of more mainstream series offering, ASUS has a comprehensive lineup of B650E and B650 based motherboards. And we actually have a prior live stream that goes into those boards if you're looking for insight into those models. We still do also have some of our X870E as well as our X870 based motherboards available as well if you're looking for that. And then, of course, as I noted, right, B650 and B650E. Now, overall, the biggest differential you're going to find is usually going to be the specification support for things like PCI Express Gen 5 in terms of not only the M.2 SSD, but the PCI Express, also in terms of the totality of the PCI Express lanes. And usually what this is going to kind of be most immediately apparent to when you look at the board is going to be in terms of the I.O. and the expansion. So you're going to generally find that the higher end series of motherboards like X670 and now X870 are going to have a lot more I.O. So you're going to see, generally at a minimum, 8, if not more USB ports on the rear of the motherboards. You're going to see actually on all of the motherboards at least 4 M.2 slots, if not more. So this is where you start to notice the delineation between kind of more entry or mid-range series offerings. We didn't note here the A620 based chipset, which is the most entry based offering, but technically that is kind of the entry into the AM5 platform, but it does offer some notable reductions compared to B650. So I think for probably the majority of you that are interested in kind of gaming, more advanced advanced productivity, content creation, you're going to want to be looking at one of these boards. The last note that we'll note here is that for the most part, pretty much you can see that you do have overclocking support pretty much across the board, with the exception of course, the upcoming B840 base refresh that'll be present. But on everything that we're going to be talking about from a performance tuning perspective, whether it's going to be leveraging Expo, whether it's going to be doing things like manual overclocks through a multiplier, whether it's going to be taking advantage of Curve Optimizer or the brand new exciting technology called Curve Shaper, these are all going to be present to you, and they're all going to be available. And the other big update as well is going to be that USB 4 specification. You're going to see that right here for X870, this is now standard. So all of the motherboards are actually going to have 40 gigabits. And we're going to talk about this now from the perspective of the base specifications you're going to have available to you. But this is pretty exciting because in the prior generation, literally only my flagship series X670E motherboards had 40 gigabits on them. So our Crosshair series based motherboards had 40 gigabits, but none of the other models had 40 gigabits enabled. So now even models like the Prime here that you're going to see, which is an entry point to the X870 based platform, as well as our TUF Gaming models, actually have 40 gigabits USB-C. So that's pretty exciting. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up one other slide here. We're going to jump into some of the base specifications, and then we're going to start talking about these motherboards. We're going to go into some of the features, functions. We're going to fly over and take a closer look. But I want to go ahead and see if we got any quick questions that might have come up regarding the boards. So give me 1 second here, and I'll take a look at the questions and see what we might have coming right in there. Hey, Pele, happy to have you here, man. Thanks so much. We got somebody excited for the ProArt X870E. Fantastic looking motherboard. Should I do a little bit of a teaser? Let's do a little bit of a teaser. It is a beautiful board, and we showed, of course, that in the B-roll, but there it is. There's that ProArt motherboard. It absolutely looks fantastic. One of the favorite IDs, really, for I think a lot of people. They just love that really refined design ID. And we're definitely going to be diving into this one. Hey, we've got a Justin Chu, J Custom, one of the best modders and builders in the game. So fantastic to have him here. We've also got PGPCs joining us. So don't see any other quick questions coming in right here. I'm finally upgrading. Wow, from a i7-30. Whoa. Okay, so you're talking about kind of that Sandy Bridge, Ivy Bridge era. So this is going to be a really big upgrade because you're going to be really kind of going everything. You're going into high-speed PCIe. You're going to have much faster USB. You're going to be going to DDR5, higher core counts, much more advanced microarchitecture. You're going to be going to much higher speed Wi-Fi that's going to be on board. I mean, that's just an insane level of upgrade, man. So happy to have you joining us here on the stream as well. We've got also one other person letting us know I'm still on X299. They're waiting for what they say is X499. Well, you know, we can't comment on anything that hasn't already essentially been embargoed, essentially, or discussed. But, you know, I would say for the majority of people that were on prior platforms like high-end enthusiast desktop platforms, something like the X870E based platform is a fantastic choice because it really does afford you high memory density, high core counts, as well as lots of I/O and lots of expansion in the same way you saw for something like X299. So if you haven't considered, you may actually want to be considering this platform. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at, I think, our base specifications here. So this is going to be essentially the minimum specs and features that you're going to have. So the great thing is, as I've noted here today, we're going to be talking about Prime Series, TUF Gaming Series, ROG STRIX, ROG, and ProArt. And so regardless of any one of these models that I'm talking about, you're going to get all of these items. So again, even starting off at kind of the most entry here with the Prime Dash model, you're going to be getting these features, functions, and specifications. So let's go ahead and bring this up and take a look here. So we're going to have this actually be in 2 slides. So let's take a closer look here. So the first set specifications is going to be all the boards are going to give you at least that primary PCI Express Gen 5 by 16 slot with Q release. Now, the really great thing about Q release is, if you guys haven't seen, it's a fantastic technology that we have that allows you to easily go ahead and remove the graphics card. We're actually going to demonstrate this, but if you've ever had that pain of essentially trying to remove the graphics card from the slot, kind of taking something like a spudger tool or a screwdriver or something to be able to depress the actual latch, this is now so much simpler. And the great thing is that this is a technology that we recently launched a few years ago, and it was on some of our higher end boards, but we've been bringing it to more and more motherboards. So I'm excited that, again, even down to something like the Prime model, you're going to actually have that Q release technology. You're also going to have all of the boards at a minimum will at least have one of those PCI Express Gen 5 M.2 SSDs, and they'll also have our latest generation version of our Q-Latch technology. So we're also going to demo Q-Latch as well. This is going to be, of course, just an easy, simplified way to be able to quickly install your M.2 SSD. Speaking of M.2 SSDs, every single board is going to at least at a minimum have 4 PCIe NVMe M.2 SSD slots. So if you're a big fan of M.2, we've got you covered. Again, even going from the Prime motherboard, you're going to have at least 4 PCIe NVMe M.2 SSD slots. When we take a look at the rear speed I/O configuration, it's going to be fantastic, with every board at least having 2 USB-C and also having 40 gigabits based USB. Now, we know from our polling, the majority of users only have a 5 gigabit device. I'd love to know in the comments right now, what is the fastest speed device that you currently have. For most users, it's generally going to be like an external SSD or maybe a high-speed flash drive. Most users only have a 5 gigabit device. So keep in mind, with a 40 gigabit device, this is quite a bit faster, because even if we were talking 20 gigs, which was already an impressive spec on kind of more recent generation motherboards, that was already 4 times as fast. So we're talking a significantly faster level of speed. So pretty impressive. Wi-Fi 7, this is a fantastic technology. If you're not aware, really one of the great things now with the advent of Wi-Fi 6E and now with Wi-Fi 7 is we're talking about faster than Ethernet based connectivity. So and gigabit Ethernet. So that you can legitimately see speeds in excess of 1.5, even 2 gigabits in terms of the overall throughput speed when you pair one of these motherboards with something like one of our Wi-Fi 7 enabled routers. So it offers an absolutely fantastic experience, low latency, high speed, stable operation. And we've got some really cool technologies that we're going to demo here, including things like Q antenna, which is now a simpler and easy way to be able to connect the antenna on there. You're also going to have our AI networking technology, which is pretty cool, allows you to help you better understand your network environment. And we're going to take a look at that. Speaking of Ethernet, of course, all the boards at a minimum are going to have at least 2.5 gigabit. And as actually we go up the stack, you're going to have boards that have either dual LAN, some boards that'll have 5 gigabits, and boards like our ProArt that are going to have 10 gigabits. We also don't generally call it out, but you might be surprised. There's actually specialized ESD protections that we put on our Ethernet ports called LANguard, and this actually helps to absorb actually electrostatic discharge from helping to from essentially protecting the actual Ethernet controller, because it is actually a point failure that can happen with a surge of spikes, sags, things along those lines. So it is cool that we have this technology, and all the motherboards will essentially have this LANguard technology. Q Shield, which is that integrated IO shield. I think probably most of you are aware of this. I'm just going to go right here. That's just that nice fully integrated IO shield on the back of the motherboard. So every single one of these is going to have a full integrated IO shield. So you're going to be good to go on that side. No worries. All the boards are going to at least be an 8-layer and then 2-ounce copper. The 8 layers helps to just maximize signal performance. There's a couple of other things that really go into the kind of the overall design, but 2 ounces of copper also helps to mitigate some of the thermal pooling. Essentially, you can get heat that builds up around the CPU socket, especially with these higher core count CPUs, especially if you're heavily loading them under sustained loads and operations. So this ultimately helps in terms of performance. ProCool power connectors. These are thicker pins that we actually use for the CPU power connectors and the 24-pin power connectors. It helps to reduce resistance and helps to increase current handling performance. And all of these motherboards are going to feature that. This is actually something that we originally designed way back when for our workstation series of motherboards. And now we've actually gone ahead and integrated it in the vast majority of our motherboards. And again, every single one of the boards that we're going to have a look at today is actually going to feature that ProCool power connector. And last but not least, let's go to our secondary slide as we get ready to go into our first board here with the Prime. What are we rounding things out with in terms of the minimum spec? You're also going to get one of the favorite things, and we're going to demo it. I'm going to demo it today, but it's going to be the ASUS UEFI, the class-leading best UEFI in the industry, is now in all its glory in HD, full HD. It looks so much nicer. It's crisper, it's sharper, it's clearer. There's more space that we have available to it just because there's, of course, greater pixel density. So very, very excited about that these motherboards are introducing this. Now, also another great feature that we're going to show and we're going to demo is going to be Q Dashboard. This is part of the UEFI, and I wanted to add it separately because it's so cool. It's a real-time visual map of your motherboard and all of its connectors, and lets you know what's going on, what you actually have connected, and allow you to easily jump into those connections so that you can quickly configure them and have access to them. So we'll get into that a little bit later when we get into the BIOS demonstration section. All the motherboards have USB BIOS flashback. Of course, this is an ASUS innovation that we pioneered years ago. It allows you to just update the BIOS or the UEFI for the motherboard. No CPU, no memory, no graphics card. You just have to connect your power supply. You take a flash drive, you plug it into the port, and you hit that button on the motherboard, and then from there it will update the UEFI directly. Oh, sorry, I have a redundant one there with actually Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth. SafeDIM and QDIM. SafeDIM is actually an optimization in terms of the design that we have for the slot on the motherboard. And QDIM is a cool detection LED. We'll actually show you this in a demo in a little bit, where essentially there's an LED light that will turn on to help you know that you physically have installed memory on the system before your system posts. Safe slot is going to be our enhanced slot, helping to mitigate torsion or shearing that you might have from heavier graphics cards or from sometimes movement that you might have. QLED is our 4 LED diagnostic system. Every single board has that, so that you have a debug for your CPU, for your DRAM, for your storage, and for your graphics. And then last but not least, of course, you got to love your RGB, right? So, of course, all these motherboards support ASUS Aura Sync, and they have our Armory Crate software that allows you to manage, monitor your system, and customize your lighting. But there is also going to be another thing that we're going to demo and showcase, which is going to be Driver Hub. So for this generation, we've actually decoupled your drivers from the Armory Crate based interface. And it's a very lightweight application that you can launch. And if you just want to be able to install independently your utilities, have access to your drivers, also be able to be notified when new drivers come in, you can use Driver Hub. And we're going to actually check that out a little bit more closely when we get into our demo section. So again, this is just a recap of what you can expect regardless of which motherboard we look at. But from here, let's go ahead and take a more deliberate look at these motherboards. And we're going to start off with our Prime series. But before we get into the Prime model, I'm going to quickly go ahead and drop a couple of links for you guys, so that if you guys want to check this out, I'm going to drop in the landing page for our X870 based motherboard. So this will have all of our motherboards listed there. It's got a full spec sheet that actually has a really cool comparison chart. Let me see, actually I have it here, I can show you. It's a great chart that we worked on with our team, and allows you to kind of very easily compare your boards. Yeah, so here we go. So you can see right here, it's a very cool chart, and it has all the motherboards on here. So you can see ROG STRIX, the ProArt to TUF Gaming, and the Prime series. And you can see all the information is broken down to you. So from chipset, form factor, the VRM design, the slots, graphics, right? The M.2, right? The configuration, the ports. All of the data is all in there. So if you want to be able to have a clean and easy reference that you can go ahead and take a look at, this is a fantastic option, and it is on our landing page. So I'm going to drop the landing page in there. I'm also going to drop a link to our PC DIY community. We'd love to have you join us there. So again, if you have questions, check out those two resources or drop them in the chat, but we're going to get ready to jump into it. So let me drop those in. Let me quickly see if we have any questions, and we'll get to it. So give me 1 second here, guys. And I will go ahead and make sure you guys get your links. Okay, so we're going to get our landing page here open for you guys. And also drop the cooler link if you guys want to check that out. Okay, so let's drop that one in there for you guys. And we'll also go ahead and drop our AIO link in there. But again, I'll talk about AIOs towards the very end of the stream, okay, where we've wrapped up everything on the motherboard side. All right, so we've got those guys in there. Let me quickly see if we've got any questions that might have come up before we get ready to jump into it. PGPCs says the landing page is coming well. Hey, GGF events. And you guys can check out Stuart Tonks and GGF events. He's actually already gone a little bit hands-on with some of our latest generation boards. I believe he did like a little bit of an early overview on the latest generation ROG Crosshair. Of course, the Crosshair is the benchmark when it comes to AM5 based motherboards. Hey, we've also got the one, the only the Poets is in the house. If you guys aren't checking him out on his socials, make sure to go ahead and do that. Um, Floofy. So this is an interesting question. Will the driver hub be available for other motherboards? Make sure to stay tuned in terms of updates in that regard. I do think that ultimately there will be some backporting that will occur, similar to actually what we did with our My ASUS application, which was developed to allow users to be able to have quick and easy access to services support, as well as actually also access to drivers and UEFI BIOS updates. So just make sure to stay tuned for updates. We'll let you know essentially if we're going to have backporting that will be occurring. But as of right now, it's essentially launching for this new generation of AMD based motherboards. And then, of course, as we move forward, will be for any new motherboards that will be launching. Okay. Um, So somebody's asking, is the X870 motherboards, what's the point compared to, let's say, B650, right? So I think the big things that you always want to look at is this not just something like USB 4? I think for one, most people that are probably on B650 aren't necessarily going to just upgrade because we've got a great range of those boards and they have great specs, right? So unless you really find yourself that you wanted even maybe more M.2 slots, maybe you want that Wi-Fi 7, maybe you want 40 gigabits connectivity, right? Maybe you want some specialized function or feature that's on one of these new motherboards. Because you can, of course, fully support all Ryzen 9000 series CPUs on those boards, I would tell for probably the majority of users, you don't need to go out of your way and you need to upgrade. I think for the majority of people that are probably going to be adopting X870 and X870E based motherboards, they're probably coming from an older platform. So they're maybe still on AM4, or maybe they're from a similar kind of older Intel based platform, right? But they're not necessarily probably on B650 or B650E. Although definitely if they're on B650, not even B650E, then you're starting to get even to more entry level boards where the specification differences even between something like the TUF Gaming or the Prime Series motherboard could be maybe an incentive enough depending on the spec that you're looking for. So as always, I think that's hopefully what we're going to get into, and there's going to be some pretty cool stuff. So let's go ahead and get into it with the first model. We're going to take a look at the Prime X870P Wi-Fi. All right, so let me go ahead and bring this one up here, guys. So this is going to be the first board that we're going to take a look at here in the stack. I'm just going to go ahead and show you a couple of photos, but then we're going to throw it under the secondary camera. We're going to get a tight little look at it. We're going to get a little bit of a tour on the board, and we will go from there. So let's go ahead and bring this guy up here and take a look here. All right, so here we can see we've got the board. Now, all of the motherboards are going to have a robust and performant VRM. This is already going to be utilizing 14 power stages. They are a teamed power stage based configuration. You're going to have good inductors, good capacitors that are going to be on here. But the reality is it doesn't matter which CPU you decide to run, regardless of whether it's a 7000 series, whether it's an X3D, whether it's something like a 9950X. All of these boards will be able to run with full stability and reliability, whether it's at stock or whether it's a performance tune or overclocked configuration. The main benefit that you're going to get as you increase the VRM design as you go to a higher and higher end model, so for instance, like an ROG Strix, a ProArt, or even a Crosshair series motherboards, is going to be those that essentially just have better levels of efficiency. The thermal performance also is going to be complemented by higher performing heatsink, which helps kind of maximize some of the kind of the margin cases if you're really starting to kind of push the envelope under sustained kind of multi-threaded loads. But the reality is that all of the boards you can feel confident, it doesn't matter which CPU configuration you're going to have, they're all going to get the job done. So you don't need to feel that you're going to kind of be gated by having to go with one board just to be able to run a certain CPU configuration. So no worries in that regard. Now, you can see right here that this is what we're going to be demoing here in a moment, but this is going to be the Q release design. So this is going to be the easy ejection design for the graphics card. You can also see that, of course, we've got 2, 3, 4 M.2. As I noted, these motherboards are going to have 4 M.2. There's also going to be the new latching mechanism that we're going to touch on here in a little bit. And as we take a look here at the rear I/O, you can see you've got legacy USB 2. Then you've got, of course, 2 high-speed ports with 40 gig and 10 gig, 5 gig and 40 gig. Then you've got your USB BIOS flashback, 2 more 5G, and then 2 more Type A USB 2 with Wi-Fi 7, which also includes Bluetooth, and then of course your analog audio out. And then last but not least, right there, you've got your 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, right? So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the board under, and we're going to highlight some of these cool design elements that we're going to have on the board. So let me go ahead and get this one under the shot here. And I really do love the design overall aesthetic, and I will note the pricing here in a moment for you guys as well, as we do have the pricing for all of these boards. This will be pretty much the most entry within the product stack that we're going to have. The Prime series is really kind of a foundational model. It's great for a lot of people out there, whether they're going to be first-time builders, whether they're going to be gamers, advanced productivity, science, and simulation. It's kind of really a jack of all trades board, but it does really kind of everything well balanced, right? It's not going to give you the most advanced functions and features, which you're going to see on some of the other motherboards, but it's going to give you a great foundation for your build. So let's go ahead and get this under our secondary camera here. All right. And actually, sorry, hold on 1 second. I'm gonna put it on a PCB board. It'll be a little bit easier for me. I'll put it on this PCB board right here. All right, there we go. And make sure you guys can see that okay in a second. All right. All right, if you guys can let me know if that's coming through okay, maybe just a little bit hot there, so we'll drop it down for you a little bit, and you guys can still see me. And maybe we'll bump me over here to this corner. Okay. All right, guys. So here you can see this is going to be the X870P. Love this kind of really nice, clean silver design ID that we have always on the Prime series, of course, with that nice black contrast you're going to have. All those, of course, nice 5K caps. Here you can see, actually, if you don't notice, those are literally more visible. These are those thicker pins that we have in terms of the ProCool power connectors, and those are going to be present here on the CPU power connections that you can see there. Of course, here is going to be your DDR5 banks, pretty straightforward. You can see you've got your CPU and CPU OPT in there as well as a dedicated AIO pump header that's going to be on the board. Now, one thing that you might actually not notice, but I'm going to see if I can tilt the board and see you guys can maybe pick this out a little bit, but if you notice, it's a big heat sink on the inside of the actual motherboard. Part of the actual a requirement that we have to be able to ensure stable and reliable operation for that 40 gigabits is that actually some auxiliary controllers can actually have a certain amount of heat and power consumption that sometimes surprises some people. And so you can see even outside of this really big extended VRM heatsink, which you can see this heatsink is actually extended over and it's making contact on all the inductors, so the chokes, and then it's also making contact in terms of the actual power stages. But then you'll also see that we also have that large, big heatsink internally, which is actually there to help to be able to provide cooling for that 40 gigabits that the motherboards has. So just a little bit of kind of an insight there for you. That's something you might have missed. So continuing kind of our little journey right here as we adjust that again. There we go. We've got our 2 ARGB headers right there. And of course, you can always multiplex those ARGB headers. So if you're looking for the ability to kind of maybe have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fans from one header, you can easily do that. Of course, you've got your USB-C header right there, which is great for your latest generation chassis, your legacy USB 3. And this is actually going to be a difference that we're going to have as we get into higher end boards. And I'll note this into a higher end board, but the higher end boards are going to have even little subtle things like the actual legacy front USB 3 is going to be reinforced. Let me know in the chat if you've ever actually connected a front legacy USB 3 cable and you've actually sheared it or pulled it out. So on the higher end boards, it's actually got a metal bracing frame design, which actually helps to mitigate that. You can see that big, nice Q release retention slot mechanism right there. So that's going to be pretty cool. I'll show you how that works in a moment. I've also got a little bit of a video clip. You can see, of course, one M.2, another M.2, and then as we go down, we can also see got another M.2 and another M.2. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly install a drive here, let you guys see how this works. So go ahead and take this out. Let me know if that's too loud, guys. Might maybe use a manual screwdriver, so it's a little bit easier on your eyes. Now, of course, excuse me, a little bit easier on your ears. You can see right there the thermal pad, pretty straightforward, but this is also going to be another difference. On the higher end boards, you'll have boards that actually have a dual contact design, which means that there's a thermal pad on the top, and then there's actually a thermal pad and a heatsink on the underside. This being a more entry offering, you're going to get solid thermal performance here, good dissipation from the base heatsink, but of course there is going to be even higher performance on those lower end boards. Okay, so excuse me, on those higher end boards. So we're going to go ahead and just grab our M.2 SSD, and you can see the first kind of really easy Q-latch design is going to be here, this M.2. This is actually a revised mechanism that we have. So I'm going to take right here my Viper Patriot M.2 SSD, and you can see all I need to do is just angle it in and push it in, and then that's it. It's locked in place. So it's a very, very simple process, and you can go ahead and then just press it and it pops right out. Again, I can just go ahead and do that. Now, some of you might be familiar in the past, you might have had like a standoff, and you would have to screw in the standoff, and then you would have a very small little screw, and then you'd have to put the screw to be able to lock everything in place. But now all you're going to need to do is just pretty much put this back in, and you can notice these screws are captive, so you don't have to worry about losing them. So it's nice, it's simple, it's easy to go. And on this one as well, you're going to actually have two of those Q latches, but you'll notice down here for these, you're going to have the standard, excuse me, you're going to have the standard M.2 standoffs that you would still need to go ahead and thread in there. So do be mindful of that. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that M.2 SSD right there. Give me 1 second here, and let me check right here. And thanks for my team members letting me know that the noise profile is not too bad. You can also see one more chassis fan header right here. And then as we move down, we've got, of course, our front panel right over here. Another chassis fan header that's going to be over there. Two USB ports right there. Your clear CMOS, another 3-pin ARGB, and then you're going to have two more chassis fan headers, and then your front HD audio, with this being an isolated audio design. So all the way around, quite well suited in terms of the overall flexibility that you're going to have for a wide number of builds in terms of all your connections. I showed you guys already the I/O, but I'm going to show a quick example of the Q antenna, and I want to also show you how the actual Q release works. So give me 1 second. I'm going to quickly grab a graphics card so that I can demonstrate this for you guys. All right, so I'm back, guys, and you can see right here I've got my graphics card. So I'm going to go ahead and install it, and it's now locked in place. So traditionally, right, what you would have is you would probably have like some type of latching mechanism that would be available to you right here, and you would try to push down on that mechanism, and you would generally find that it would be quite a bit difficult to get access to it. But now, if you actually see right here, so yeah, right here, where my finger is, now there's an actual latch. Now on the newer motherboards, excuse me, on the higher end motherboards, they have even a more advanced design implementation where there's no actual latch. It's just actually a different motion to be able to engage what we call the Q release slim design. But here it is going to be very simple. I'm just going to go ahead and depress this, and you'll see that it kind of locks in place. And now I can pretty much just pull out my graphics card, and I'm good to go. So it's a really, really nice and simple process. Again, I love the fact that we now have this option for you again on even our most entry-level model. So again, I just kind of show that to you. It locks in place, and now I just push that down, and I can pull it out, and I'm good to go. So very straightforward, very easy, very nice to work with. Okay, I'm going to also see if I can quickly show you maybe the QDIM feature here. Let me go ahead and put this heatsink back on here, guys. So give me 1 second. All right, one screw there, and one more here. All right, very, very good. All right, so let's see if I can go ahead and show you this other feature that I've got right here. think I might have, yeah, power supply that I can use right here. So give me 1 second. All right, so I've got my Thor here. So I've got actually a couple of extra cables here. I'm going to remove a couple of them to make it a little bit easier on me because I don't need all of these. Okay, there we go. We'll take those one out. I'll take this one out here too. And what I want to show you guys here is going to be this design implementation that we have, which again can be, I think, just a nice way to be able to help you kind of streamline the installation experience, making sure that you kind of catch on everything. So you're going to see right here, I'm just going to go ahead and plug in the power. Okay. And let me get my power cable that I need to have here. Give me 1 moment. I'm going to grab this power cable. I need to cut my demo right here, so give me 1 second. Let me grab this auxiliary cable that I've got. Okay, and let's see if we can show you guys here. All right, so we're going to plug in the power supply. Okay, so hopefully this should be okay, guys. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I'm going to be able to show you guys here. Hey, Liquify Mods, happy to have you here. The ROG STRIX F50 will be available at Best Buy. Hey, LANOC, happy to have you guys. You guys should definitely check out LANOC. They are a great review site, and we'll be able to give you that. Hopefully I grabbed my right demo PSU. If not, I'll have to figure out an alternative, and I'll show you guys probably on my secondary test bed. I get the chance. So it looks like actually I'm going to do it on my secondary test bed. Sorry about that, guys. I thought this one was actually my active PSU. This one was just actually my aesthetic demo PSU. But what I was going to essentially show you is that with the QDIM feature, and I will show you on another board when we have this up and running, is that the actual LED system that we have here, when there's actually no DIM that's physically installed, an LED will illuminate, letting you know that the actual DIM hasn't been physically installed. And the reason why that actually can be useful is because in some situations, you might decide to then go install your DRAM. So let's say you're going to go ahead and put in a module. So let me go ahead and grab a DIM here. And let's say you go and you put in a DIM, but in some situations, you might not actually fully seat the DIMM. And so you can actually think that your module is actually installed, but it's not installed. And what the DIMM detect feature does is help you know that you're actually installed the DIMM. So you could imagine that you would put it in, and let's say maybe you could do that. So the actual DIMM is seated, but it hasn't been fully seated because this clip isn't fully locked in. So that light will actually still be active. And so I'll show you this, guys, actually on the other system where I now have that power supply that is active, but it just helps to streamline the experience, make sure. So once that's actually fully seated in, that LED will illuminate and letting you know that you're actually good to go. Okay. So that is going to be the prime board. That's going to be the Prime X870-P Wi-Fi. And one other feature that we're going to show you right here is going to be the actual antennas. So I'm going to go back right here and show you how this works. So here you can see that we have the actual Q antenna. And when you can see right here for the antenna, traditionally, if you guys have ever actually screwed in an antenna, you'll know that you actually have to screw in. So you actually have to rotate the antenna. But now for this new generation, we've gone ahead and phased in what we call our Q antenna. So this is actually a push fit connection. So all you need to do is just push in. It's got a nice little actually satisfying audible click. It clicks in place and you're good to go. And this isn't actually just simpler. One, I really love the fact that it actually will cause the cables to not become kind of strand in on themselves and actually twisted up. But it also is very easy to just go ahead and remove. I can just pull it out, but it's still snug enough that it's not going to accidentally kind of come out. But these also do actually maximize the overall what's called attenuation performance. So in our actually internal lab measurement, we found that not only is this simpler, but actually gives us even overall better RF performance. So there's actually going to be some cool other things too that we're doing in software in our AI networking that we'll actually demo once we get into the software demo portion. But overall, I really love this new simplified antenna design. Just makes it really nice and easy to be able to make sure you can connect that. A lot of people also forget that the antenna is going to be required when it comes to your Bluetooth and your Wi-Fi connectivity. So again, a really nice option right there with the Q antenna design. Okay. So Robert goes, as that feature does help. I've had a few instances where my RAM wasn't fully seated. Yeah. So, you know, for some of you guys that I would say are super enthusiasts, you know, that probably are super knowledgeable, you know, you've built probably tons of systems. You might not find that that DIMM detect feature is going to be super useful. But the reality is, I think all of us probably at some time during our kind of journey through PC building have probably found a situation where we might have had a problem when we're actually building our systems. And again, our goal is try to just make the overall installation process a little bit easier, a little bit simpler for you, and try to add in certain type of features and functions, which ultimately help to have you more confidence as you go about building your system, right? So overall, hopefully that helps there. So give me 1 second here. We're going to move this board off and we're going to get ready to take a look at the TUF Gaming. And as I get ready to grab my TUF Gaming motherboard, I'd love to get a sense from you guys out there is who is actually utilizing a TUF Gaming motherboard. And if my ASUS colleagues can go ahead and help to drop in, I think the link for this board for the Prime motherboard as well as the pricing, that would be fantastic. But let me go ahead and bring it up for you guys. So here, and I'm going to drop this link for you guys. So you'll see right here, the Prime X870P Wi-Fi, that's going to be coming in at $250. So actually, I think that is very reasonable. Again, when we take a look at this board, is going to be giving you the 40 gigabits, right? That 14 power stages. It's going to have that Wi-Fi 7. Keep in mind, this is going to be 160 megahertz Wi-Fi 7 as opposed to 320 megahertz Wi-Fi 7. You are going to get PCI Gen 5. You're also going to get, as we noted, right, when we were talking about that base specification for the M.2, You're going to get PCI Express Gen 5 for your M.2 and 4 M.2 on there, as well as 2.5 gigabit LAN. Overall, it's a great board for this price point. So $250, very, very solid. So let's get ready to go ahead and take a look at the at the TUF Gaming series. All right, so let me grab our TUF board. Put my TUF board over here. Ooh, let's look at that new TUF board. It's got a very cool new ID design for this generation. It was inspired by containers. So you'll see this kind of slatting that you would see if you guys have checked out some containers. You'll get the slatting vibe that you kind of have there in containers. So it definitely gives us this kind of, I think, very rigid and kind of strong feeling to it, which of course is a key hallmark of what we really love to do within the TUF Gaming ID design. It definitely looks quite different than the Prime series. If we even go side by side right here, we go ahead and bring them side by side, and we'll do a little bit of side by side image outside of the physical boards because it might be a little bit easier, but you can see the difference right there between the Prime and between the TUF Gaming. So let's go ahead and take a look here at now the TUF Gaming X870 Plus Wi-Fi. All right, so let's go ahead and bring up our images here. And give me 1 second here and bring up for TUF Gaming. Perfect. All right. And we're going to do the same. We're going to do a little bit of a flyover right here for the TUF Gaming. So you're going to see, as I was noting, right, we've got that cladding type design here that's, like I said, inspired by containers. You're still going to get that nice Q release design mechanism that we have on there. You're going to have multiple M.2 heatsinks. This one actually is going to have, as you can see right here, one for the primary. Then you're going to have another right here, but you're also going to have additional M.2 heatsinks. So this will actually be an upgrade compared to the Prime in terms of giving you more heatsinks as well. Kind of doing a little bit of that flyover. We'll still put it under the secondary camera, just a little bit of flyover. But the ProCool power connectors, we can see actually pretty comparable in terms of the actual overall fan headers that are going to be on here as well. You can also see one ARGB right there, another ARGB and another ARGB. But this guy right here is going to be cool, which is going to be the inclusion of the TPU microcontroller, which gives us some advanced functionality in terms of AIOC that we're going to be touching on a little bit later once we actually get into the demo. But when we take a look here at the I/O, let's go ahead and take a look here at the I/O. We can see that we've got a nice little bump up right here. So we've got 10 gigabits, 2.5 gig right there, 40 gig, so dual USB-C. We've got a Type A USB 2, 10 gig, and then 5 gig right here. So that's going to be 4, that's going to be 6, that's going to be 8, that's going to be 10, along with Wi-Fi 7, USB BIOS flashback, and then full multi-channel line level audio out. So overall, pretty close to what we had on the other board. So also, just keep in mind that in terms of the accessories, again, you're going to get that Q antenna. You're going to get the screw right there for the M.2 SSD. You get these little spacers, which sometimes can be advantageous depending on the kind of design of your M.2 based SSD. And if we take a little bit of a look over here, if you remember on the prior motherboard, this one you'll notice has 1 of the Q latch, 2 of the Q latch, 3 of the Q latch, and then 4 of the Q latch. So you can actually see that in terms of the Q latch design, it's actually further upgraded, right? Where we saw in the Prime series only had 2. Here, all 4 of those are going to be also the Q latch. There's also going to be an upgrade to the audio codec, where it also comes included with the DTS audio suite in there. So that's going to be an additional value set if you kind of want to tweak and tune and you're taking advantage of an analog audio connection. So I'm not using a digital USB headset. So somebody means something like our Delta headsets. But if you're using an analog set of headphones physically plugging into the unit, then you may actually prefer the additional software suite that we have there for audio adjustment and tuning. Okay, so let's get ready to go ahead and throw this one under the secondary cam. We'll take a closer look at it right here. Give me 1 sec here, and I'll bring this one up. And we'll put this one down right here. And I won't re-demo the functionality for the Q release or for the Q latch because it's identical on, of course, this excuse me, on this motherboard as it is on the Prime series motherboard. So they're pretty much going to be the same. But I will go ahead and just do a real-time price adjustment right here so you guys can see. So this one is going to be $309.99. Okay, so now you guys can see the price right there. So you're going to be compared to prior to $49.99. Now we've got $309.99. Okay, so let's go ahead and throw this board underneath our secondary cam. I'll also throw a little bit of the lighting. This board has just a smidge of RGB lighting. It's very, very, very subtle. It's not a lot at all that's going to be on there. There we go. Okay, guys, you guys can see that okay. So there we've got our TUF Gaming board. All right. And so we got actually a little bit of a cool emboss effect. If I kind of maybe tilt it, you'll see it's got this little emboss, which is really cool. It's subtle, but I really love the way that it's got this kind of look there. You can also see, like I said, that cladding kind of design. You can see right there just how dense that heatsink is. It's literally going all the way down there and up there. It's got multiple lines. So there's a lot of actually surface area there in terms of the overall dissipation performance for the heatsink assembly. So you definitely don't have to be worried in that respect. Let me go ahead and see if I can brighten that up a little bit, and you can start to see a difference. And you can also see just how dense that heatsink is right there from the top, right? Very, very, very large heatsink. Again, on the inside right there too, you'll see on the inside, it's also got that 40 gigabits heatsink for the 40 gigabits controller that we have on there. And on this TUF Gaming, it is important to note that here, if I kind of give you this other view, you'll see that the heatsink actually extends. So this entire I/O shroud, you'll see that this portion right here is all of a heatsink that then connects down to this portion of the heatsink, which then makes contact with, of course, all the power stages and with the inductors. So it's a very large performant heatsink assembly. Okay. So, of course, ProCool power connectors that we also have right here, AIO pump, your primary, of course, chassis fans, your QLED, your ARGB header right there. You can, of course, see your USB-C, your legacy, of course, front USB that you have on this board as well. Of course, got the Q release right there that we already demoed previously. You can also see, of course, the M.2 primary heatsink, and then, of course, you have your secondary unified heatsink, which would cover 2 of the M.2 SSDs. And then you can see your last M.2 SSD down here, all at the way at the bottom, has no heatsink. So essentially, of the 4 slots, 3 have heat sinks. You'll notice that as we kind of go up to the higher end boards, that's where you're going to continue to see more differentiation, is bigger heat sinks on all the drives, and then we're going to start getting into dual contact heat sinks. Okay. We've got another fan header right over here to type 2 USB 2 USB 2 headers, of course 3-pin and 3-pin, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3 in total, and then a nice grouping down here with 3 more chassis fan headers that are all grouped together. Now this is also going to be another one. Let me see if I can bring this up just a little bit. And right down here, I do want to call this one out. This one has an optional OPT temp sensor. So the OPT temp sensor is going to be nice for some of you that want to maybe have a bit more of kind of a, let's say, entry or quote unquote budget kind of water cooled build. A lot of water cooling enthusiasts love to use the OPT temp sensor to integrate into a custom water loop. And so, of course, this can be fed into the fan controls, so you can have your fan controls respond to the actual temperature that you map in from that side. So, of course, with our fan controls, you have lots of different options that you can map the temperature. You can map the temperature to the GPU, you can map the temperature to the CPU. You have different options, but you can also map there with that optional temp sensor. So all the way around there, that gives you pretty much the tour there of the TUF Gaming motherboard. And again, when I turn it over right here, you're going to see that that same design that we talked about previously with the Q antenna is also going to be present on this board as well, and that integrated I/O shield also. And I'm just going to show you the back. I love also the little kind of just design accents that we do here on these boards. So you can see we've got that cool little design. Now, one other little thing that you might be interested to know is that we actually take a look here at the back of the motherboards. you're actually going to see that you notice no pins right here that you might see in some other areas. So all of the motherboards are actually going to be using SMT production processes, so surface mount technology. This is a more advanced production process that can be utilized. In the past, we usually only used it on higher end motherboards, but it does allow us to have essentially a higher level of accuracy in the actual production process, especially for high speed signaling. You'll find that it's going to be more common. So all of the motherboards in terms of their DDR5 are using SMT production processes, and that's also going to be the same for the actual primary PCI Express Gen 5 as well. It's going to be using the SMT production process. So that's just a little kind of cool Easter egg for you guys if you're paying attention. And you're wondering why this area is smooth and why on another area it's not smooth. Okay, so that is going to be the TUF Gaming motherboard. All right. Now here, next up, we're going to get ready to go into ROG STRIX country. But before we get ready to go into ROG STRIX, I'm going to go ahead and see if we got any quick questions. So give me a second here. All right. So somebody says, as I got an ROG Gene board. Yes, if you got the X870E Gene, that's one of my favorite boards. I have one of those actually in my micro ATX based system for my AM5 platform. It's a fantastic motherboard, but right now we have no plans to refresh a micro ATX based offering for the X870 based chipset platform launch. So if you are interested in micro ATX, make sure to check out like our TUF Gaming B650M Plus gaming Wi-Fi. It's a great option if you're looking for a small form factor, medium form factor based board. Although of course on the small form factor, we will be talking about the mini ITX board. I do have it here, so we will dive into that board. Okay. So yeah, so what somebody asks is like, is there fundamentally a difference here? I think what they're might be asking is there a difference when it comes to the reliability of kind of the motherboard as you move up within the kind of tier? And no, not really. The biggest differential you'll generally find is if you talked about quote unquote reliability, would be potentially the capacitors. So an example is that when we take a look at the ROG based motherboard, the capacitors are going to be, let's say, 10K rated capacitors, and they also are going to have a higher tolerance in terms of their minimum and their maximum temperatures, right? So technically, those capacitors are going to be more durable and ultimately offer a higher level of reliability. But as a whole, all of the components that are used are very good quality components and rated for high kind of life cycles. So from that perspective, you're generally not going to have a situation where kind of one board is significantly under in terms of another board. But as you do move up the product stack, you are generally going to get a higher grade of componentry that has then essentially higher margins built into it, which could, in theory, provide you with potentially a longer level of reliability. But when you probably really add up those values, for most people, they probably wouldn't be running the product long enough that they would run into that differential, if that makes sense, right? Probably most people would be, let's say, like in 5 years, maybe look to be replacing their motherboard, right? But these will be some of the differences. But remember, when we talked about kind of the 8-layer PCB, all the boards are 8-layer PCB, and even this TUF Gaming board is already using mil-spec base rated capacitors, which are quite good in that respect. So again, you can feel very confident in terms of the overall reliability of the product as a whole. Okay. So Ken says, yeah, so one thing you want to keep in mind, somebody's asking about kind of board pricing. So something that sometimes isn't correctly understood when I think pricing gets talked about is that you can't necessarily purely kind of compare boards from one generation to another. Some people try to do that, but the important thing you have to understand is that the cost and complexity of the board deltas are quite different. So sometimes people go, well, I bought this motherboard in this class and it costs this. Now, of course, you have things that exist like, let's say, inflation or the cost of materials. If you actually look up independently, just look up the price of copper in the last 5 years, and you'll see that the price of copper, a key component that goes into motherboard production, is almost like a hockey stick. It's literally almost gone up like this, right? It is just increase in cost. So the cost of the materials hasn't stayed constant, right? But even the inherent complexity. If we go back even a few years, there are some users that were saying, I think that they were like on Ivy Bridge, right? If you look at some of the Ivy Bridge motherboards, there were actually 4-layer and 6-layer based motherboards. And those motherboards also maybe only had 1 ounce of copper. every single motherboard you're looking at here is at least using an 8-layer PCB with 2 ounces of copper. That literally means that the base PCB material is more complicated and more complex and more costly to produce. So you don't have an apple to apple comparison, because it's not like you bought a 4-layer motherboard in the past and now you're also buying a 4-layer motherboard. If you then wanted to compare other items as well, they're not the same. The VRM components that are being used here, they're significantly higher performing because you have much more performant CPUs. In the past, you might have not had anywhere near the same level of power componentry. And even things like the networking technologies, 2.5 gigabit networking has never become cost parity with even gigabit networking, right? And so when you kind of start to add up all of these things, I think users have continued to demand that they want more and more spec, but that also adds more cost, right, into the product, right? When you balance that in with the totality of the design, I think it's actually quite compelling that if you really look at the value set of what you're getting an extraordinary amount of features and functions for the price points that you're buying into. In that respect, actually, I think it's very compelling that even on the entry side, something like the $300 motherboard like this TUF Gaming, it's 40 gigabits, right? That's awesome. That literally this model, literally in the prior generation, I would have had to buy my Crosshair Hero motherboard to get 40 gigabits. That motherboard literally costs twice as much as this motherboard, right? Now it has way more features and functions and some really amazing things in terms of its specifications, but I think that actually shows you that you can still get very good value. So you do have to kind of look at the totality of the total design and the complexity of what we're looking at, right? Hopefully that adds a little bit into kind of the perspective. Okay, so let's go ahead and get ready to jump, I think, into our next motherboard here. So we're going to go again. We took a look at, and I'll do a quick recap here on the pricing before we get into ROG Strix. And let me know who likes a white themed build. Do you like white theme builds? Are you looking to build a white theme system? I mean, the Prime series definitely, I think, was already a great option for those that might be looking for a white themed build. But we're very excited to have our ROG Strix-A, which we're now introducing, which is going to be great. So again, we started with the Prime X870-P Wi-Fi coming in at $249. We then brought in the TUF Gaming X870 Plus Wi-Fi, which is coming in at $310. And next up, we're going to be going into the ROG Strix, so the first ROG Strix model. And one other thing that I didn't note there, but let me go ahead and touch on, is for the TUF Gaming motherboard. Let me bring up one quick image right here for you guys. If you remember, I said that all the motherboards at least have one PCI Express Gen 5 M.2 SSD slot. The TUF Gaming actually has 2. So again, I did do kind of that little flyover, but if we do kind of a side-by-side between the TUF Gaming and the Prime motherboard, let me go ahead and bring it over here and just kind of bring this up here. So what I'm referring to here is that 2 of the slots, so you have one slot you can actually see right here. It says PCI Express Gen 5 by 4, and then you can actually see another one, PCI Express Gen 5 by 4, right? So on this motherboard, those 2 slots, right, those are actually going to be PCI Express Gen 5. And this is another area that somebody, when they asked about pricing, right, this is something that a lot of users just don't understand. Even doing something like adding in more wiring, right, can require sometimes what are called redrivers, or you can have quick switches. So you actually have to add in more circuitry. There's also higher tolerances and signal requirements that get put in for high-speed signaling pathways. So again, even things, remember, like that memory that I was talking about, there's no memory there's no motherboard in the past, even a flagship motherboard that you would have found that would have been using like SMT production for things like the memory or for the PCI Express. But now that we go to much more strenuous standards that are much higher in terms of their signaling requirements, you have to go to more advanced processes, right? But again, that is also a difference between the Prime and between the TUF Gaming. Now, probably for the majority of you, you're going to be fine with just Gen 4, actually even Gen 3 for general desktop use and for gaming use. But if you did want 2 of the fastest base drives, the TUF Gaming is going to give you 2 versus the Prime was going to give you 1. But they both gave you the same total of 4 M.2 SSDs. Okay. All right. So let's get ready to go into our ROG Strix. And let's see, did anybody give us the thing as white theme builders? Okay. Hey, Wired Hardware is joining us. Happy to have you here right there. We've got, I wanted to go black stealth for my new build, but now I'm going to go black plus RGB. I can definitely feel that, right? Um, so we've got Mike, hey, how you doing? I like mixing white and black. So somebody kind of doing those Panda or the Stormtrooper builds. That's actually kind of similar to my build right here, where not necessarily everything is all in white. The Poets gives us a little bit, says, I love an all plaid build. You know what? I like that. Be bold and confident in terms of your color choices, right? Nelson says, yes, a white build like a formula. All right. Well, let's go ahead and take a look here at our ROG Strix-A board. Ooh, this is a very nice looking motherboard, guys. And it's going to be our first one that really I'm going to do a little bit of a light up on it because this one actually has some lighting. So is that a little bit crooked? There we go. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Oh my God, that looks so nice, right? That looks so nice. And you can even see, I mean, the Prime series already does a fantastic job for a lot of white builders, but of course you'll notice that that PCB is going to be black, and here the PCB is going to be white. So that just helps to really elevate that look and feel a little bit further. And you know, if we wanted to probably get even a little bit more kind of white, let me see right here. I don't want to take too much time up, but of course, if I populated those dims, you can see right there in that build, I've got actually some white dims. But here we have some very nice white dims from our friends over at Patriot, and we can see how that would look. And of course, now these are RGB, so you can of course add a little bit of color flare to there, right? But let me go ahead and populate those two. And we can start to see, yeah, those nice, otherwise white dims go nicely in there, and you can start to see how that would start to look, right, in terms of the overall look and feel on the board. But it's got a really nice look and feel. All right, now one other item right here is we're going to show you the cool new ID design that we have for this generation in terms of the RGB lighting. All right. Oh, there it goes. You can angle it just a little bit for you guys, and you guys can see it right there. And we'll put it under the secondary camera so you can see, but it's subtle. It's got a little bit of an off-axis pixelated RGB ROGI that's on there that I think looks quite nice. Just gives it a little bit kind of contrast, a little bit of color play. And just kind of going from left to right, you can see that we've got the little silver highlights. It picks up really nicely. It looks really good. Okay, so let's get ready to go ahead and take a look at the ROG Strix. We're going to take a look at the course, the features and functions on this guy. So let's get ready to dive into it. And I'll also note kind of when we're talking about Strix, really what are we getting in terms of at a minimum upgrade? So I think that's going to be the first thing. So I'll bring that up and say, when we go into ROG Strix, what are we going to be getting compared to the other boards, right? Namely, of course, the Prime and the TUF Gaming models. So here we can see the ROG Strix X870-A gaming Wi-Fi. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up my base notes here. I'll also go ahead and update the pricing there for you guys on this one. 1 second right here. And here we're going to be going to $369 for this board. So let me go ahead and update that one. All right, there we go. So now you guys can have the pricing $369.99. Okay, so we're going to go in and take a look here. Okay. So when we move into Strix, I think the main upgrades you're going to be talking about here is, of course, you're going to go into more PCI Express Gen 5, kind of like what we had with TUF Gaming. All of them are going to have an external asynchronous clock generator. They're all going to have this PCI alteration mode switch, which is going to be down here. You see this little guy? Now, if you guys might be doing a vertical mount, let me know in the chat. Are you doing a vertical mount? In some situations, sometimes, depending on the quality of the riser cable that you might have, you may potentially have an issue, and it can cause problems with the actual system to post. And so with this alteration mode switch, it actually allows you to toggle from one operating mode to another operating mode, which causes the cable to default into a lower spec speed, which would generally allow it to initialize and run correctly. So then either from there, you could attempt to debug. Maybe you have to swap out the cable or you do something else. But essentially, it can be very nice as opposed to having to kind of rip everything else apart. You can at least get up and running, initialize, and go through with that process. If you didn't want to take advantage of that, or maybe you're not doing a vertical mount, or you have no need for it, you can also toggle this into actually a fan speed option inside of the UEFI BIOS. So there's 3 different settings. So you can have kind of like full speed, medium speed, or low speed. So if you actually wanted a physical hardware-based switch, imagine you had a whole bunch of fans that are all running directly from the motherboard. Maybe you just want them to have all one simple fan profile that you can literally just customize. You can use that alteration mode switch that's going to be on there. Okay. You're also going to have a minimum of 1 dual contact M.2 SSD. Also, you're going to have 1 Q release M.2 SSD design, and we're going to kind of touch on that in a second. And we have AIOC as well on this board, and we're going to demo that in a moment here. So let's get ready to kind of jump into it. You're also going to, at a minimum, have that reinforced USB 3 header, which you can notice here, these USB 3 headers, I'll put them side by side. But if you notice here, there's a metal kind of bracing frame around that actual legacy header, and that just helps to ultimately give it more resiliency, mitigate against torsion or shearing of that header. Okay, so let's quickly look, I think, at the rear IO first before we look at the board. And we can take a look here, and the IO is really nice, quite a bit upgrade. So you'll notice the big thing here is you're not going to have any legacy USB on this board. So you've got 10 gigabit, 10 gigabit, 10 gigabit, 10 gigabit, and 10 gigabit. Remember, on some of the other more entry boards like the Prime or the TUF Gaming, you had some USB 2 ports, but here there's no USB 2 ports. So we have 4 5 gig ports. We then have 5 10 gig ports. We then have another 10 gig port, and then we have dual 40 gig ports. We also, in the prior Z790 refresh, we had also finally introduced clear CMOS into more entry-level motherboards. We had never offered clear CMOS on the Dash A series before, and so now we're happy to continue to offer that in this series refresh. So the X870-A has a clear CMOS. So if you're a little bit more of that performance tuner, you want that nice convenience of being able to factory reset your board very easily, that is the clear CMOS button is now on the back of the motherboard. And then, of course, you go over to Wi-Fi 7 as well. With the Wi-Fi 7, of course, you also move over into a faster level of performance for this unit, moving up from the 160 megahertz based operation. All right, so let's go ahead and take a closer look at the actual motherboard underneath the secondary camera. I'm going to show you off some of the cool things. I do also want to note that the antenna that comes included with the Dash A is going to be a matching antenna. It's going to be in white. You also get a cool little keychain that comes with this. You get some zip ties, and you get, of course, your favorite ROG stickers. I know a lot of builders really love the actual ROG stickers. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. This looks exactly like the X870-E, but white. It looks similar, but it's actually quite different. So we're going to talk about the Dash E in a little bit. The Dash E actually has a couple of big upgrades that this board does not have in terms of features, functions, and spec. But I think for probably 90% of builders out there, the Dash A is going to be a fantastic choice, and you really won't kind of need to go higher end than this, if that makes sense. Again, consider some of the spec that we have here. We weren't even offering this on the prior X670 base models. So this is really a fantastic board, but there are going to be some clear differences, and I'll note the differences between the A and the E. But keep in mind, the E is also black as opposed to the A. So if you want white, this is our only full kind of white themed motherboard. The other option would be our Prime series, which is very popular with white builders, but that one doesn't have a white PCB. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one under the secondary cam. I'm also going to just get a little bit of a water, guys. Give me one moment here. And I don't know if I asked, but if you guys just let me know. Audio's all good on your guys? Is everybody, my volume levels are good for you? Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look here. Oh my gosh, that motherboard is so bright. We're going to have to bring back our exposure a little bit. There we go. Okay. All right. There we go. All right, so here you guys can see the ROG Strix X870-A. So the first item right there is you're going to see that really nice, beautiful, cool pixel animated RGB logo that's going to be on the board. So it's got that really nice, clean look. You got those Pro Cool power connectors. So these are going to be these thicker pins that allow, like I said, for reduced resistance and improved current handling performance. You can see those nice, really big, dense heat sinks that we have there on this board. So again, that's going to keep the power stages in there. Now the power stages are going to be an upgrade compared to what's going to be on the Prime series, and also going to be from the TUF Gaming series. So there's a higher performance, but again, there's no real concern in that respect because all of the motherboards could run any one of the 7000 or 9000 series CPUs. This one also has that internal large heatsink that we talked about. We'll actually see right there, there's that big internal heatsink that of course makes contact with the 40 gigabit controller that is on the motherboard, helping to give us those two high-speed USB 4 ports that we're going to have there. We can also see something that's kind of like a little bit cool, but it's stealthy, is that the board actually comes with these little protective covers for some of the fan headers. So we found sometimes some people will kind of bend some of the headers depending on the installation or different things like that. So you'll actually have these small little rubber inserts, right, that will come to protect the actual headers that are going to be on there. So if you kind of can't clearly see the header, you can see now I removed one and now I can see it a little bit more easy. So that's my CPU fan. I have a secondary CPU OPT and then the AO pump header. Then we of course have one 3-pin ARGB. We then, of course, have our DDR5 slots. Then we've got a USB Type-C right there. We have dual USB 3, which is nice if you have a chassis that actually has more high-speed USB 3. An example of that might be something like our Helios or Hyperion chassis. So now here we're going to go to one of the key differentiations between, let's say, the TUF Gaming motherboard and the ROG Strix models. So all the ROG Strix models will have this type of design. So you'll notice here, if we do take a look at the TUF Gaming model, right? So here's the heatsink on the TUF Gaming, and it went a little bit dark. So let me go ahead and bring that up again so you can see. But you'll notice that this had screws, right? Just like the Prime. So to remove this heatsink, I have to take the screwdriver and I have to remove the actual heatsink, right? So that lets me know that there's going to be a difference, because now when I move back to my Prime motherboard, there we go. When I took a look right here, you'll notice that there's a button right here that actually says push. So if I push this, you'll actually see that it depresses the heatsink and the heatsink just comes off, okay? So that heatsink is a really big, large, dense heatsink, because of course this is going to be PCI Express Gen 5. And now here we can see that we've got our M.2 based SSD. And if I want to put my M.2 SSD in, you can see right there, now it just locks into place. And assuming that I move the thermal pad, again, remember this one just, we talked about this previously, that if you notice, there's two actually thermal pads because there's two heat sinks. There's one underneath and then there's one that's on top, right? So you have one thermal film that you have to remove and then another thermal film that you have to remove because it's making dual contact, right, with the top and the bottom. Now that can be of value because there are sometimes some higher grade M.2 SSDs that sometimes they might have maybe NAND, or they might have a secondary controller, or they might move maybe the controller, or they might have maybe some secondary components on the rear side. So it just allows for better overall thermal dissipation performance, okay? So again, if I put in this drive, I just angle it in, lock it in down. Now it's in place, and all I need to take is take this guy back in, and I now lock it in. So you can see really, really easy, really nice. So it's again a very, very simple process to be able to go ahead and get your M.2 SSD installed. So Michael notes right here, he goes, love the Q the Q latch, 2 thumbs up, ASUS, fantastic. Yes, I would definitely agree. Mike goes, the big heat sinks are so stylish. I really do love the way that the heat sinks look. They look really nice and contiguous overall with the look and feel that we've got with the board, so it looks quite nice. Also, we've got Khalid letting us know that the pixel art on these motherboards looks really beautiful. Props for the ID team. Yeah, the ID team is fantastic, right? Nelson goes, no temperature probes for this motherboard. This one actually does have an OPT temp sensor. The TUF Gaming motherboard also has an OPT temp sensor. So you do have OPT temp sensors on this motherboard if you do want to go the custom water cooling route. So again, if I want to eject this, all I need to do is to press that. Then from there, you can see I've got a little pull tab kind of right there, lift it out, and I can then take my drive. If I want to remove it, I then just press that and it ejects out there. So very, very easy, right? So you're good to go. So that just shows you the difference on that side in terms of the ROG Strix board having this feature, whereas of course we don't have that feature on the other boards. Now, if we continue kind of our journey all the way down here, right, we're also going to see again that PCI alteration mode switch that we talked about. So that alteration mode switch, you can toggle it into different positions, right? So this is going to allow you to change essentially the PCI operating speed that would be for your primary slot. So if you have like a riser cable and maybe there's an issue, maybe you need to toggle it down to, let's say, Gen 3 for some reason, you can toggle it down into a different operating mode. You can also remap this inside of the UEFI BIOS to fan controls. So if you want to be able to have kind of like a low, medium, or high, then you can do that. So you have a different level of functionality with this actual switch. Now, as we move over here too, you're also going to have a start button. This motherboard does have a start button. So if maybe you want to do some benchtop testing, it is a little bit nicer that you don't have to kind of maybe short the pins right there in terms of your front leads. So you do have a start button right there. You're also going to have more fan headers. So this one's actually going to have all of the Strix boards are going to have pretty much the same. So you're going to have 5 chassis fan headers along with the CPU, OPT, and the primary CPU, and your AIO pump header. You got a start button, 2 USB 2 ports right there. And then from there, chassis fan header. And then you can see you've got your 3-pin ARGB, your other chassis fan header, your HD audio that you're going to have right there, and then the Supreme Effects audio design. So keep in mind the Supreme Effects audio design, this is going to be higher grade than the TUF Gaming or the Prime series. It also has what's called the Savitech audio amp that's going to be integrated within there. It gives a little bit more punch. So if you've got headphones that might have a little bit more sensitivity in terms of their required kind of output, then this unit will be able to drive those generally a bit better than what we would have on the Prime series or in the ROG Strix, on the TUF Gaming series. So the last thing I do want to show is that if we actually take off this heatsink, let me go ahead and pull this off here. Got one more here to take. Okay, so when we go there, again, we can see that this motherboard, right, is going to have one M.2, then we're going to have another M.2, we're going to have another M.2, and we're going to have another M.2, right? So we're going to have quite a bit of M.2, so 4 there, but remember, you got one dual contact right there, and this one, just like the TUF Gaming, you can see that you're going to have the Q latch design on every single one of those M.2 slots. So you can see I've got one there, you've got one there, and you also have one right there. So you're going to have all of that equipped. Okay. Now, one other item is going to be right here. Let me see if I can go ahead and show this to you guys. There is also another feature that we call M.2 Q slide. I'm also going to show you the documentation that you're going to get, which is going to be a little bit revised. Some of you that might have maybe adopted the Z790 series might be familiar with this, but we did revise the actual included documentation. So it's a lot nicer. I think it's a little bit more visual. It's easier, so you can see it. It's kind of color-coded. It shows you all your corresponding connections. It's a simpler overall kind of process. You can also see right here, you can do a scan. with the QR code on your phone and be able to get all the kind of core information. But it goes through all the steps in terms of what you need to connect, how you need to connect that. And I think ultimately it's more useful than the base manual. Of course, you have the full manual if you want to be able to download this, but think about this kind of like the quick start guide, if that makes sense. That is going to get you taken care of. So that is one thing I wanted to note on there. But the other item is we are now starting to see a little bit more variation in terms of the M.2 SSDs that are coming to market, and there are some different ones in terms of their sizes. So inside here, you're going to, of course, like I said, get that little kind of keychain. You're going to get your little lanyard right there. See that there right there. You got an M.2 bumper. You got your SATA cables. You also have some zip ties that you also get in there. But what I want to show you is this guy right here. So this is going to be a slide mechanism. And the slide mechanism so you can see right here, when I put the slide mechanism on, I can pretty much just pull this into a different location, and I can adjust essentially for the different depth. So if you have, let's say, a more compact M.2 SSD, maybe you get one on promo, you want to pick it up, you want to make sure to be able to lock it into place correctly, you can go ahead and put this in place. This is actually oriented, actually this should be oriented correctly. But if you have a shorter length, so something like a 2230, then you could utilize that, right? So keep in mind that by default, you don't need this. For the majority of users, when they are getting an M.2 SSD, it's going to be probably the standard 2280, which 2280 is going to already fit by default. But if you did get something maybe more compact, you now have also this little slide mechanism that we've gone ahead and incorporated in there as well. Okay, so that is going to be also another item that will be on the ROG STRIX model. And we're going to go into our demo in a little bit, I think, for the first time in terms of some of the stuff, the OS. Not too long from now. But let me go ahead and put that on there. Okay. All right, so that's going to be the ROG STRIX X870-A. And as I noted it right for you guys, this one also comes with white antennas, okay? All right, so next we're going to go ahead and take a look at the ROG STRIX X870-E. Oh, actually, I didn't show you guys. Let me go back and show you on this one. Although I can show you on the Dash E. So we're going to show this one off right now, the Dash E, and I'm going to put it up here in a moment. But I'm going to go back under, because on the STRIX boards, we also have a different design for the actual Q release for the graphics. So let me go ahead and brighten this back up for you guys. Okay, so there you guys can see that. Give me 1 second. Let me swap out this one here. So this is going to be the Dash E. And if you take a look right here, if you'll notice, there's no button or switch, right? Like what we have on the TUF Gaming, or, excuse me, on the Prime. And when we take a look at this, the Dash A model, you also notice the Dash A doesn't have anything either, right? So you might ask yourself, well, what did you guys do? Do you guys not have, you know, the that cool design anymore? And no, we actually still do have the Q release, but we actually have what's called Q release Slim. So the really cool thing about the way that this Q release design works is that it is essentially just based on an angle. So there's kind of like a detent mechanism in there. This locks the card in place. So if actually I were to go to pull the card from the rear, the card actually won't come out. It's locked in place. It is there. It is locked in. It's not coming out. I'm actually moving the board. But if I go and I lift it from the front, you'll actually see that the card comes out, right? So that is even like the more enhanced version now that we have for these motherboards is going to be the Q Release Slim. So again, you can see right here, I've gone ahead and installed it. This is going to be on the Dash E. This will be the same pretty much on all of the new boards that I'm going to show you for the ROG Strix models. So the Dash A, the Dash F, the Dash E, the Crosshair, and the ProArt, they will all have this Q Release Slim. So instead of having a physical button that you depress, you pretty much just pull from the front, and then the graphics card comes out. So again, locks into place there. Graphics card is in. So if I go pull in from the back, it's not going to come out. But now if I want to go ahead and pull from the front, it pulls out. So there you guys go. I didn't get to show it to you on the Dash A, but now I'm showing it to you on the Dash E. So let's get ready to go ahead and take a look at the Dash E. So somebody's asking about the Dash F. The Dash F will be a more limited available SKU. We're generally probably going to be offering it more so as a certain channel-based partner will be offering it. So that could be me necessarily saying the availability might be more specific to maybe like our ASUS store and let's say Micro Center. So do be mindful of that. And of course, if you actually go to our corresponding website, on the website for any of those models, we will have that information listed for you. So if you want to be able to see where to buy that unit, then you can check out that information. And I would agree, for a lot of people, the Dash F is going to be a great model for their consideration, right? So let me go ahead and bring up the Dash E. And we'll go ahead and also put in your pricing for the Dash E. I'm also going to put this one here on here. Oh, such a good looking board. It's got these nice little kind of cool accents on it where you can kind of see where like you can just angle it. You get a little bit of these kind of like reflective kind of tendencies that kind of just give it a cool little vibe. There's some black, there's some gray, there's some silver. It's very monochromatic, but it has a very interesting design. It's got a little bit more edginess than like our Crosshair series because it's got things like Cybertex, where on those models they don't. But this guy is going to be absolutely just insane when it comes to the IO. This is going to have 13, that's right, 13 USB ports are going to be on the rear for this motherboard. So if you've been looking for a board where you can seriously kind of go to the next level in terms of all the connectivity, this board is going to be the board that you're going to want to put on your short list. Okay, so let me go ahead and also put in your pricing here for the Dash E. So this one is going to be coming in at $499. And we'll do a recap here in a moment. So when we did our recap, again, the Prime comes in at $249. The TUF Gaming comes in at $309. The ROG Strix Dash A comes in at $369. And then the ROG Strix E. Okay, so this is going to be X870E, not just X670, but X870E Dash E Gaming is going to be $499. Okay. Yeah, I can touch on if everybody does want a little bit of the tour for the Dash F and even comparison between where the difference is on the Dash F, I can still do that. So I don't have the Dash F here, but I have all the information. I have all the images here, so I can definitely touch on the Dash F. So it's no problem. Yes, so Lano also noted that correct, right? So not 13, but 13 fast USB ports. So again, remember when we looked at the Dash A, there was not even any USB 2 ports. That's right, this is going to be 13 USB ports, and they're all fast ports. So this is absolutely a monster. There's not even any 5 gigabit ports. They are all literally 10 gigabit ports are faster on this motherboard. So it's absolutely insane. And this is also, again, part of the reason why it really integrates its cost and going to the next bracket. Because again, even if we had the Dash F, the Dash F wouldn't have that same class of specifications, right? So this board is also going to go into a significantly higher bracket in terms of the PCIe M.2 slot expansion. So this board is going to have 5 M.2 slots, right, versus 4 M.2 slots. And this one is also going to have 3 of those M.2 slots are going to be PCI Express Gen 5 in terms of support. So 3 slots can be PCI Express Gen 5, where remember on the prior one, we were looking at 2 PCI Express Gen 5, right? And then there was also 4 slots. So again, we're going really kind of taking it to the next level if you talk about IO and you talk about kind of expansion. I think for a lot of people, this is really going to be probably the most kind of enthusiast board. The Hero will again bring even some other items that we're going to talk about when we get to the Hero. But this is really going to be, I think, a hard board to beat in terms of its kind of its total feature set. So let's go ahead and take a closer look here at the E. Bring up our images here. Nope, sorry, wrong image, guys. Give me one moment there. There we go. Okay, so here you can see the board. This one's actually a render. I'll bring up a little bit of a closer image. Plus, I'm going to put it into secondary cam so you get to see it in person. But you'll notice here, for all 5 of the slots, there's all full heatsinks. So there's no slot that doesn't have a heatsink on this motherboard. The heatsink density is significantly higher, and also the VRM is again further upgraded compared to what we had on the Dash A. So really the big upgrades are going to be here is going to be the VRM is going to be more robust. It's going to have higher speed I/O with a total of 13 ports that are all at least all 10 gigabits. This is also going to have Nitro Path DRAM technology, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. This is going to be exclusive to only the Dash E and to the Hero motherboard. It also has the debug LED, which is going to be on here. It's got that reinforced, of course, USB 3 header. It's got a larger, more dense Gen 5 M.2 heatsink. Also, of course, has that easy M.2 design in there. It has the Q Release Slim that's also going to be on there, and it has the Q Release, the alteration mode switch, and then it also has the Supreme Effects audio design with the Sabitech audio amp that's going to be on this board. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look here. Also, I'll note this in the tour, but this board also has 3 internal USB 2 headers. So a lot of you guys that run a lot of kind of multiple RGB controllers, maybe like it, then have your AIO, you've actually sometimes required to have like a USB splitter to run more essentially internals. So this one's actually pretty cool because this board has 3. So again, very, very friendly towards those enthusiasts that really are going to need more kind of internal connections for especially those RGB based controllers. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a closer look at the Dash E underneath the secondary cam. And if there's questions, I'll go ahead and answer those in a moment. So give me 1 second here. All right, there we go. All right, let me straighten it out for you guys. There we go. Okay. Yeah, we're going to go into the UEFI in a little bit, guys, right here. Which brand of would you recommend for my 1300K 7070 Ti? I'm not sure. Squalor, if you can repeat your question, right? Okay. So if we take a look here, even a higher performing VRM heatsink, this one is also going to have a heat pipe that's also connecting this heatsink to this heatsink assembly. So even better for thermal dissipation performance. You're going to have your ProCool power connectors. You can, of course, see 4 groupings right here. The 4 array configuration, I think, is going to be very nice as well for kind of custom water cooling enthusiasts. They're really going to appreciate, again, you have this tight kind of integration here with 1 chassis fan, CPU OPT, and then I think also the AIO pump header. So they're all kind of grouped together there right at the top. The debug LED, you have got the start button right there. You got your power button. So both are going to be right there. ARGB. You got your, of course, your USB-C, your reinforced legacy USB 3. Now these slots also are going to be unique, and I'm going to see if I'll show you guys some on-screen information in a little bit, but let me see if I can kind of show you a little bit in terms of this DRAM design. You might be able to see it. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but these latching mechanisms, they're actually different on this board. Yeah, you can see it just a little bit right here. Yep. If you notice right there, you'll kind of see these little metal indents on these sides. That's actually part of the new construction process for the DRAM Nitro Path design. But these actual slots are going to be different, these DDR5 slots. So these are going to be featuring Nitro Path. If you're a fan of definitely performance tuning your memory, then you're going to definitely love the Nitro Path design. Okay. So continuing that journey down, you've got, of course, your easy M.2 installation, same just like before where we talked about where this unit, it just has that easy ejection based mechanism. So as I noted right there, just press this, pull that off. You can see right there, you're good to go. And if I wanted to install my M.2 SSD, again, I put it in there and now it locks in place. Put that in there. And now I can install my M.2 SSD. Now this one has, we do want to count because there are going to be more here. So if you notice, one dual-sided contact. If you remember on the prior board, the dash A, had only one dual contact, even though we had more M.2 slots. So we're going to go here and remove these. Okay, so you're going to see that this one has one dual contact, two dual contact, and then three dual contact, right? So there's quite a bit more dual contact M.2 SSD designs, with these also, of course, all being the easy M.2 Q-Latch design. So if we go to the dash A, and remember, we just kind of fly over. I know it's a little bit bright, guys, so it'll be a little bit overexposed. But remember, those other M.2 slots, they don't have the dual contact design. So we go back, dual contact, and this one does not have the dual contact. It has one dual contact. Remember, the primary is going to be a dual contact, right? But there's only one. So you're going to have more dual contact on the dash E, okay? So that is going to be one of the value points there of the dash E. It's going to be that dual contact. And then, of course, down there at the bottom, you're going to have two more M.2 slots as well. So that is going to be a total of, that's right, 5 M.2 slots on this motherboard. And then when we were, of course, looking at this board, you're going to also see that you've got your headers down here, chassis fan headers, 3 USB ports internal. Again, another chassis fan header, the alteration mode switch, your ARGB headers right there, and then your chassis fan headers, and then the same Savitech audio amp for the Supreme Effects audio design. Then you can see your last two. So again, if we kind of pull all of those and see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 M.2 SSD slots on this motherboard. Okay. And I can tell you that in my testing, I've already validated with the Nitro Path. Essentially, what we have is we have a shorter set of pins, and I'll show you a little bit of on-screen information in a little bit. But this new revised, essentially, the DRAM tech allows for a higher level of scaling. And already in my validation, I've been able to do 7800 and 8000 MT fully stable on this board, as well as on the Crosshair Hero, which are the only two boards that actually feature this Nitro Path DRAM tech. Now, generally, that is also going to mean that you're going to have to run a decoupled Infinity fabric. Generally, that would reduce performance. Excuse me. Generally, you're going to want to maintain a 1-to-1, but again, if you want to be able to try to kind of tune, be able to get higher DRAM dividers, be able to see if you can leverage even greater bandwidth and be able to tweak for maybe potentially more performance, along with then tuning down items, like your timings as you scale up that DRAM divider. It's essentially just more option. And what we're generally finding is about a 400 megahertz or 400 MT, essentially delta between non-nitro path to nitro path. So again, this will allow you to have a higher level of DRAM scaling compared to, let's say, like the Dash F or the Dash A or some of those other boards, or even compared to the prior generation, where even this could actually offer higher DRAM tuning than what you would have compared to, let's say, the Hero in terms of the DRAM topology design. Okay. So are these nitro connectors more expensive as the standard, since only a few boards have it? Yeah, so it is actually a more complicated process in terms of the actual DRAM kind of layout and topology. So it is a kind of, let's say, a more costly implementation. So yes, as a whole, this is part of the reason why this board kind of goes up in terms of its overall cost, right? So I'm going to show an image here for the IO in a moment, but I am just going to go ahead and do it on the side profile because I just want to be able to look at it in real as opposed to an image. But definitely the other big point on this board is going to be this impressive IO that it's going to have. So if we look back here on the IO, you can see you got HDMI. And then as we go up right here, right, you're going to see 40 gigabit, 10 gigabit, 40 gigabit, 10 gigabit, 10 gigabit, 10 gigabit, 10 gigabit, 10 gigabit. So that's going to be 4. Clear CMOS, right? 10 gig, 10 gig, 10 gig, 10 gig, 20 gig, and then 5 gig. Okay. And then Wi-Fi 7, again, 320 megahertz, and even then gold plated for the actual line level audio out. So this is actually a big upgrade because, of course, in the prior board, we were looking at 2.5 gig. So now we go to 5 gig, so even faster level of networking. We went to 4 USB-C ports that are on this board, right? So 4 going 10, 20, and 40. And then all of the remainder of the Type A ports are all high-speed 10 gigabit enabled ports, right? So overall, really impressive in terms of this. Again, this is going to be 2, 4, and that's 8. So that's going to be 8 right there. And then you've got 3 right there, which is going to be 11. And then you've got 2 more right there. So that's going to be 13. So 13 ports in total for the Dash E. So that's really, really impressive, okay, in terms of that connectivity. So Eddie goes 10G only on the ProArt. Well, 10G, I think, really makes most sense on the ProArt. The reality is the majority of gamers just don't need 10G based networking, and very few users have 10G ISP based services. If you really wanted 10G, you could easily add a 10G add-in card into our motherboards. But again, the ProArt, if you need 10G natively, that is going to be a great choice for you, right? It has 10G natively on board. But I think until we see continued kind of a little bit more proliferation of 10G integration, which, keep in mind, we keep very good track of because we are a leading manufacturer of networking equipment, right? Which also integrates 10G into their into our switches and not only our routers but our mesh networking products. We're able to kind of really see the kind of the corresponding delta of the users that really need that specification, right? There is also the challenge too when you integrate 10G. There's also going to affect the cost. And then you also have thermal considerations, which those are items that we did also have to account for on the ProArt. So a lot of different things to kind of keep in mind when you do want to be able to integrate 10G connectivity. Let me go ahead and take you guys over here to take a look at the pictures. All right, so let me bring up the Dash E. And we're going to get ready to go here in the demo. And a little bit, guys, we've got just 2 last ones here to round out, and we're going to jump into it. So give me 1 second, okay? All right, so let's go in here. And again, to recap on the IO side, this board has 5 M.2 slots, right? You're going to get more PCI Express Gen 5. You're going to get the Nitro Path DRAM topology, right? You're going to get then the 3, that's going to be 3 USB 2 ports internally down here at the bottom. And then, of course, when we go over into the rear, again, you're going to see that that rear is just stacked 13 ports, 40, 40, 10, 20, clear CMOS, and then the rest are all 10G ports, and then 5 gig. And then that Wi-Fi 7 is also 320 megahertz. Okay. All right. So yeah, so if you note, yeah, the postcode display. I mean, the postcode display I think is nice sometimes, but the reality is you can't see a postcode display once it's inside your system. And in most situations, the reality is the postcode display is pretty close to the analogous of the QLED, which the motherboard already has. So for instance, like even if you get like an error code that, let's say maybe you get like 15 or 55, um, it doesn't necessarily give you any difference in terms of the pathway to debugging. So it will lock on DRAM, and then you would also get the DRAM light on the motherboard. So if you had to debug the actual DRAM process, you would still literally go through the same steps. And sometimes actually even the debug code, while it can be potentially beneficial to maybe give you sometimes more data, can actually also sometimes lead you down the wrong road, because the readout is going to be contingent on how the watchdog timer gets tripped. So sometimes you can actually have a readout from the debug code and it's not accurate. Say, for instance, it could give you a code that makes you think that the issue is memory related, right? But in actuality, the issue is what you manually set for the DRAM divider, or what you manually maybe engage from a DRAM divider, right? Let's say you turning on Expo with 4 DIMMs, right? And then maybe you get a lockup because the port table is being too aggressively driven beyond its default spec. And that's technically not really a DRAM issue. It's actually the memory controller, but the board will actually give you a debug readout that would make you think that. So sometimes it's a bit better to really understand what's causing the root cause and to kind of debug through that. But yes, it can be beneficial. You know, I've been building for a long time. I can totally understand the value of it. But as of right now, yeah, they're going to be a differentiation point. That not all the boards are going to have the debug on there, but at least all of them do have QLED. And you know, I've been in the industry long enough that that wasn't the case, that every board was having at least that option. So now at a minimum, you know, every board is at least going to give you that 4-segment based LED for the CPU, for the graphics, for the boot device, right, for storage. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and go into the next item here. Excuse me, the next board. But I do want to go ahead and finish showing a little bit of the information here on the Nitro path. And I think I saw one other question right there. So Adam goes, great to see you on the stream, man. Fantastic, man. Thanks you for joining us here on the stream. Great to be able to kind of go through a little bit more here on terms of what we're going to be doing for the X870 base lineup, right? Now make an ODB connector like cars and device that reads Q code. It would still have the same issues that I'm talking about. And actually, we already did that. For years, we used to have a feature called ROG Connect. It actually allows you to take a USB cable directly from a USB port on the actual motherboard, run it to a laptop, and have real-time readout that was actually not just in numerical format, but actually in text feed readout format, to understand what was going on with your post system. The reality is, though, a lot of media and a lot of users just didn't end up using consistently the feature. So we actually had to, it was such a specialized feature, it actually literally cost us money to put it on there, because we had to develop a special microcontroller, an iROG microcontroller. We would include the USB cable in there, and then users would be able to essentially have this more advanced level of control and monitoring. You could also even do other really cool stuff, like you could do on-the-fly programming. You could load UEFI profiles. You could tune voltages. You could all do it from an external secondary system. It was a very robust level of functionality, but the long and short of it is that we're going to prioritize the time and effort that it goes into features and functionality that users are actually utilizing, and that also we see good recognition from the media as well when they're assessing and reviewing the boards. And ROG Connect, while it was a fantastic feature that for years we maintained on our products, we just didn't see enough long-term consistent use from the community and from media to want to be able to have on there. But it was a really great option that kind of took debugging and control and monitoring to a whole new level that actually really no other motherboard since has kind of reintroduced back in that regard. So it is pretty cool. Make it Bluetooth and an app. Yeah, we did that already also with the prior version too. We made it an app and we made it Bluetooth. So, you know, the guess it goes to show you, you know, at the end of the day, the community really has to be an advocate for the features and functions that we spend time and effort on, because if not, then, you know, they might not continue to see themselves get implemented, right? But at the same time, maybe we can get enough recognition from the community to redo it and maybe bring it back. Yeah, it would be. I think it would be interesting, but I don't know that there's enough real user demand that we would see, especially in relation to I think other elements, right? So, but maybe it's something that we can run a community poll and we can start to kind of assess and see what our users are thinking. All right, so let's get ready to go into Crosshair Country. We'll then do a wrap out on the ProArt, and then we will go into all of our demo stuff, guys. But before I touch on that, I do want to quickly show you guys a little bit of the information on the Nitro path. So give me 1 second right here to bring this up for you. Now, it's important to note that with the Nitro Path technology, this is only going to be present on the Hero and on the Dash E. Okay. And before I go into the crosshair, I'm also going to go ahead and show you guys a quick kind of chart between the Dash A, the Dash F, and the Dash E, just so you guys can kind of understand the kind of the quick high level differences between the two. Okay. So we'll kind of try to do all of that at the same time. So here, when you're taking a look in terms of the memory, we always, spend a lot of time and effort when it comes to kind of what we call holistic memory design. So holistic memory design is going to be everything from the PCB to the trace layout to the firmware tuning. A lot of effort goes into firmware tuning and optimization in terms of what are called the auto rules. But we are kind of always looking to try to see how we can improve interoperability, compatibility, and DRAM scaling. And so our team, to their credit, Johnson, our EE leader in our terms of our RG team, along with other team members in terms of the RG innovation team and the RG PM and the RG EE team, all came together to be able to develop what we call this new Nitro Path DRAM technology, which essentially helps to maximize the signal performance integrity by essentially making the gold contacts, right, actually shorter. So those shorter actually pathways allow for actually better signal communication, less reflection, and improved overall signal noise ratio performance, which again ultimately nets us essentially improved stability and improved DRAM scaling for more aggressive DDR5 based overclocks. So definitely, if you are somebody that wants to push the envelope and is looking into those higher speed kits, I'm not even talking about in the mid range of kind of 7,000. I'm really talking about in that minimum of 7,600 up to over 8,300 MT. These are going to be targets. And this is quite impressive because these are ranges that generally would see more reserved for something like a 2-DIMM based motherboard, like what we had in the prior generation with the ROG Maximus Gene board, which was a micro ATX 2-DIMM based enabled motherboard. So really impressive DRAM scaling that is going to be possible here. You can also see that, of course, that revised design mechanism, as I noted, helps to improve the overall slot retention by a notable degree. And that essentially will feel more rigid and more kind of locked in place with less kind of torsion and variance when you actually physically lock in the memory module. So it's going to be two parts. It'll feel physically kind of more locked in, and then also the inherent design is there to be able to maximize the performance. So again, it is important to note that this is exclusive only on the Dash E and on the Hero. It is not on any of the other motherboards in the lineup. And if you're also just targeting more conservative kind of general sweet spot values, at least relative to overclocking, because I don't think any value can be a sweet spot if it's not the actual default operating parameter. If you're kind of in that scenario, you're generally probably not going to see too much of a difference because right now pretty much all the motherboards can easily hit 6,000, 62, 6,400. So this is really going to be for the people that are much more aggressive at really, I'd say, starting out from that 7,600 upwards of over 8,000 MT. Okay, so a little bit of insight on that side. Okay. Let me see right here. On the ROG Crosshair X870E Hero and a 9950X with 96 gigabytes, what is the suggested memory? So that's one's interesting. It's important to keep in mind that anytime you move over to non-binary memory, which would be for 48 gigs, they're going to be much more thermally dependent as well. So you really also want to make sure to keep the temperature down. So you ideally would want to be able to install something like the optional 60mm fan with the fan bracket option. I would strongly recommend that to ensure stability over time. And then from there, I'd say in terms of the target, I think again, the target really comes down to what you're going to be doing. Do you need that higher density, and why do you need that higher density? When you go to higher density and you also move generally from single rank to dual rank memory, you're going to be significantly reducing the DRAM scaling divider by a notable margin. As an example, in the AMD, the port table, by default, AMD makes a significant reduction to the official port table, down to, I think, like 3600 MT when you go into a 4 DIMM configuration, right? That is still single ranked, and that also similarly still gets significantly reduced if you also do dual rank based memory. So my thought process, if you're going to be trying to charge a 2 DIMM configuration, it's still being dual rank based configuration and also being non-binary, so it has a high thermal consideration that you have to keep in mind to be able to ensure stability. It's probably going to be maybe somewhere around the 7,000 maybe MT range, I think might be kind of viable. But it's also hard to know depending on the quality of your memory controller, because the memory controller can vary considerably from one CPU to another CPU. Okay. All right. Can any of the X670E boards run stable with 4-stick 6000 M6? Actually, Zoltan, no, that was already possible on the prior generation. I can tell you I've already personally tested 6000 MT on both the Dash E and on the Hero, with my Patriot kit here and also my G-Skill kit. I've already tested those and had no issues being able to run that. Keep in mind, the Dash E and the Hero, of course, they benefit from, of course, that nitro path, so they're going to have the best performance. The Hero also has back drilling for the memory, which helps to also improve its signal routing performance. So those are going to be kind of the best boards for running those kind of higher, more demanding, specialized DRAM configurations. So if that's something you really want to run, then that's where they might shine. But we will definitely go back and I'll be testing out the other boards to see kind of what the likelihood is. But I feel pretty confident that probably even other models that we're going to have are going to be able to run that configuration, especially if you're only talking single rank. Dual rank is a whole nother thing, but single rank I think should probably be generally achievable. But there are still items that you would have to account for, such as variance between the memory controller from one CPU to another CPU, right? So just something to be mindful of. Do you think 6400 is possible in the ProArt? Yes, definitely. I think 6400 is possible. It probably would be more of a factor on whether or not the memory controller is, but I can tell you on the ProArt, I've already tested 62, and 62 passed with no issues. I don't foresee that 64 would be too much of an issue, but I'll probably over the coming week or two in our PC DIY community share some OC results. I normally do this as part of the motherboard launch, and I'll probably look to test all of them at least up to 6400, keeping a 1-to-1 Infinity Fabric, assuming that the memory controller on the CPU is strong enough. Those were all tested with the 9000 series. I'll also go back and test with the 7000 series, but technically the memory controller between 7000 series and 9000 series is pretty much the same. So the overall effect of scaling isn't necessarily any better on 9000 series, but it still comes down to the variance between every CPU and how that memory controller can scale out, right? Some are going to be a little bit more conservative and some are going to be a little bit better. Okay. All right. So let's go over here to the Hero guys. So we're going to go over into the Crosshair Hero. And who in the chat has a Hero, or who has had a Hero at one time? I've been lucky enough that I've had every single Hero that we've ever made. Now, again, I've worked for ASUS for a pretty long time. I think almost 17 years. So that's almost as long as we've been making ROG. I'm very happy to say that I was there at the forefront of when the Hero first got introduced. And I remember talking to our team, and I was excited about adding this model in because short of really the Extreme and the Formula, those are our two oldest running ROG-based models, is the Extreme and the Formula. They pretty much almost go back to the very beginning. The Hero is overall the longest, most consecutively produced board every generation, right? It is definitively what we set is our benchmark to say when we want to make the best enthusiast-based motherboard on the market, that is what we do with the Hero. We really spend a huge amount of time and effort on the features, the functions, and the design, on big details and small details, and really excited to be able to show you guys what we have for this generation. So let's go ahead and bring this one up here. We do move up from, again, the ROG Strix X870E We still also on E, this is going to be the ROG Crosshair X870E Hero, and this one will be coming in at a $200 delta compared to the Dash E. And I'm going to be very clear on helping you understand exactly what are the differences between the Dash E and between the Hero. So if you do want to make that pivot up, if you want to go to the Hero, what would you get for those $200? Why would I want to go to the ROG Hero? Okay, so we are going to touch on exactly what those differences are. Okay. All right, so let me go ahead and throw this board here on my stand. Ugh, such a heavy board. Now, right off on the bat, this one is going to have just a little bit of a dent here on this production sample, so you won't see this in the retail sample. It's such a beautiful looking board, and we have these nice curvatures that we added in for this generation. I need to try to see if I can find just the right angle. There we go. I think that might be kind of pretty close to the right angle for this guy, because it will pick up on all the little stuff that's going on in here. But the first thing that you're going to notice outside of just the refined ID design is also going to be this big, beautiful Polymo display. So this is the second generation Polymo display. It is not a screen, but it is a vibrant multi-layered display that gives it a really kind of cool design aesthetic. So there you guys can see just how it looks and lights up. Now, this does have full RGB lighting, so it can be synchronized with kind of Aura Sync. You can go with different patterns. You can change things up on here. But right now, it's just connected to, of course, the power bank, right? So it's giving a little bit of that default kind of cycle just to give you a sense of that kind of display. So you'll see that's quite a bit more dynamic and larger than what you would have on the other motherboards. But that's really only the start of the conversation when we talk about what the Hero is going to be offering you. Okay, so let me go ahead and bring up the Hero, and we will dive kind of closer into what this guy is going to be bringing to the table here. So give me a second here. All right. So does faster memory give better performance to Ryzen 9000 series? It's true for both Intel and for AMD that essentially RAM is going to be dependent on the application. So I generally actually find that general desktop applications generally will get more performance improvement than necessarily gaming. Some gaming can benefit from more DRAM bandwidth. This does tend to be more prevalent at lower resolution. So like if you're looking for ultra high refresh rate gaming at 1080p, then it's more favorable. But as you scale up and you kind of go into 1440p ultra high refresh rate, or you go into 4K at high refresh rates, you tend to be more GPU bound, and the memory doesn't necessarily make as much of an impact. It can make a difference though, but again, it's going to be on a smaller percentage basis, right? In most situations, your expectation should probably be somewhere between about maybe 2 to maybe about 5% at the highest, generally in most situations. Now, some general applications can do quite a bit better than that with more DRAM bandwidth, but then again, this very much depends on the application, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and take a look here at the Crosshair Hero. So you can see it's got that really beautiful ID design. It has a more refined design ID than what we have with the Dash E. Let me go ahead and put the Dash E kind of just side by side, just so you can kind of see how these two boards look side by side to each other, just because the Dash E, of course, is going to be pretty much trying to go up against that model, albeit, of course, at a lower price band, right? Now, this isn't going to be, this is a render to kind of a render, but I will go ahead and also, I think I have the real life photos. And so we can do that as well, because that'll give you a little bit of a better kind of perspective. But here you can see the E versus the Hero, and the Hero right off the bat, you get that big Polymo display. This is going to have a more performant VRM, so the actual power stage configuration is going to be higher grade. It's also going to have 10K rated capacitors versus these are going to be 5K rated capacitors. It does also have the NitroPath technology, and it does have pretty much the same storage-based configuration. The I/O configuration is actually going to be different. So if we do take a look here at the I/O, between the two, so here's the Hero and here's the Dash E. Now, Dash E is actually going to have more ports. This is very rare. Almost never is the Dash E going to have more ports than the Hero, but it's because we have just a slightly different config. This model has a 5 gig controller and a 2.5 gig controller, so it has dual LAN, versus on the Dash E, you only get 5 gig, but you get 13 ports, where of course, if you count your port count here, you're going to see that you're going to have 2, you're going to have 4, so that's going to be 6, that's going to be 8, and that's going to be 10. So there's going to be a reduction there that you're going to pay in terms of your total port count compared to the dual LAN configuration that you have available to you on the Hero. So be mindful of that. Again, both are going to be Wi-Fi 7. But let's dive closer into the actual board tour and talk about some of the other key differences that you're going to have between these boards. So we're going to go ahead and put the Hero underneath the secondary camera right here, and we'll go from there. Sorry. Okay. Okay, and here we go. Let's put the Hero on display. Oh my gosh, it's such a nice looking board. The Hero never disappoints in terms of its aesthetic. It is definitely always one of the best looking boards that we make. Okay. All right. It's always kind of like a tie-up sometimes for me. I don't know. All the boards really this generation really look fantastic. The ProArt, the TUF Gaming, the Prime. Probably most for me, I don't know. TUF Gaming is interesting, but I think probably for me it's going to be ProArt or the Hero. It's a toss-up between the two. So here we can see that we've got that really nice, big, beautiful polymo lighting display that you're going to have on the board, right? The ProCool power connectors, again, the full integrated heat pipe. This board, again, does have a higher stage VRM design along with the 10K rated capacitors versus the 5K rated caps that are going to be on the Strix series. You're going to have the 4 kind of grouping that we have similarly like on the Dash E along with the debug LED, right? Then you can see that you've got the start, the flex key, and then also your start button. Now with the flex key, this can be mapped to different functionalities, such as for different like an aura lighting control, but you can do actually different things with it within the UEFI and the ARGB header that you have right there. Now you're going to notice that this one does have a supplemental power connector on it. The supplemental power connector is specifically for the USB-C here. So this is going to allow it to provide a higher level of wattage. So if you wanted to be able to have essentially more wattage coming through this USB-C port, maybe you want to quick charge something like a tablet or a phone, or maybe something like a Steam Deck or an ROG Ally, that's going to be a great option. Now it's not required, but if you do want the higher wattage support, then you would need to connect this PCI Express power for this USB-C. Now, another key difference between let's say the Dash E and the Hero is actually going to be in the USB-C connectivity. So if we actually take a look right here, you're going to see that you've got USB-C right there. But then as we actually go all the way down here, let me go ahead and just remove the banner right here just for a moment, guys. But this one also has USB-C. So there's one USB-C and there's another USB-C. So this is actually pretty rare because we don't normally put dual USB-C on a class of board like the Hero. This is something that normally we would have only done like on the Extreme model, but as we're not doing the Extreme, we actually have dual USB-C. So this is great for something like a chassis like our Hyperion, where you actually have dual front USB-C ports. Again, if we go over to the Dash E board, right, and we check, you can see the Dash E only has one internal USB-C. It also doesn't have that supplemental power here for that higher wattage if you want to be able to have ultra high wattage charging support from that front USB-C. Now, if you also look here too, you're going to see one legacy USB 3 right here, but you're also going to see a legacy USB 3 there. So there's actually dual USB 3 also on this board. So one USB 3 and another USB 3, one USB-C, and another USB-C. So a lot that's going on there. Now, when we go over right here, this connector is going to be really, really interesting. This is actually a Slim SAS connector. So Slim SAS is going to give you actually more flexibility in terms of your storage configuration. So traditionally, most people will use something like the M.2 SSDs that are going to be on this motherboard. And they're great, but the reality is that the M.2 is going to be density constrained, power constrained, and thermally constrained, right? It's going to have just more challenges. But one of the advantages is with this slim SAS connector is that you could connect storage drives like this U.2 or U.3. So currently for U.2 and U.3, you can actually get capacities over 30 terabytes for a single SIM SAS connector. So instead of, let's say, having to do like 2 or 3 or 4, 4 terabyte drives or 4 8 terabyte drives that also take more express lanes, you could get one large like 16 terabyte drive or one large 20 terabyte drive and plug it directly to just the SIM SAS connector that the motherboard has. So that's going to be a key differential. It's the only motherboard in the lineup that we have that has this slim SAS connector. So do keep in mind that that is going to be a key differentiator, is that slim SAS connection. All right. I'm also going to quickly go here and remove this heatsink. Yeah, so Michael goes, is this, yeah, love that you're dreaming about U.2, U.3. Yeah, I've got a couple of U.2 and U.3 drives that I put on a PCI adapter card for my daily driver system. So I really love that we added that slim SAS that's going to be on this motherboard. And again, that's something that the Dash E doesn't have. Now, this is going to be pretty similar to the Dash E, though, in terms of the total slots, where you're going to have 5 M.2 slots that are going to be on the motherboard. They all have that quick release design that we previously showed on all the motherboards. So I will just demo that one more time, of course. So bam, you just angle the drive in there and it locks into place. And then you go ahead and depress it out there. If you're wondering, we have done fatigue and durability testing to this depression mechanism over 100 times to be able to verify its reliability and durability. And you can see you've got 3 dual contact heat sinks with thermal pads. So again, that just makes sure that you get more effective and efficient heat dissipation for your higher speed PCI Express Gen 4 and PCI Express Gen 5 M.2 SSDs. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So 5 total. All 5 have the actual Q-latch design, and then you also have the slim SAS connector as well on this board. Okay. Now another difference also is going to be here on the audio side. The audio is going to not just have the Supreme Effects audio codec, but it also has an ES Saber DAC and amp built on board. So the standard ROG STRIX series have a USB codec, and then they have, of course, the Supreme Effects isolated audio design, and then the Sonic Studio software suite. But there is a key differential between the two. While they're using the same base codec, this one also integrates an ES Saber DAC and amp built onto the motherboard. Now, if you're not doing analog-based connections, so that means if you're not physically using this connector on the motherboard, right? If you're not using the actual front audio or the rear audio connectors on the motherboard, you're not leveraging the Supreme Effects audio design and the DAC. So if you're using something like a USB-C enabled headset, then you're not actually leveraging that. So that is an important note to keep in mind if you're evaluating kind of the differences on the boards and whether or not you would take advantage of that kind of feature or that function, if that makes sense. Okay. So I'm going to finish giving you a couple of little highlights on this guy here. But one other item too that you won't readily see is going to be on this socket side. So on the socket side, this board does also feature what we call differential dye sense voltage monitoring. So this is going to be a more accurate form of reading the actual voltage that's being supplied to the actual CPU. Now, both of the boards will work with, of course, utilities like ADA64, OCCT, but this board will give you a more accurate readout due to that differential dye sense voltage monitoring design. So do keep that in mind, as well as that this board is going to give you essentially that more advanced readout functionality. Okay, so those are going to be pretty much the majority of the items that you're going to have here on the Crosshair X670, actually, yes, X870E Hero. Okay. Yeah. So what are you losing if you go with the ProArt? So yeah, I can show that in a moment, but I would probably say the main items, if we kind of go side by side, the ProArt is actually going to go up, and the ProArt is going to give you 10G versus this board is going to give you 5G, right, and 2.5. But what you would lose is you would lose the polymo lighting design, right? You're going to lose some of these onboard buttons, right? Debug, you're going to lose the nitro path DRAM design. You're also going to use actually that slim SAS connector, which I would have actually really loved for us to have on the ProArt based motherboard, because I do think that that is something that creators could actually benefit from, right? But the ProArt still also has a key feature that the Hero is the only other motherboard that has, which is the dual slot spacing design for 2x8 configurations. So the ProArt has really been ideally designed for our ProArt series of graphics cards, our Prime series, our dual card series that are 2.5 slots. So if you actually want to run 2 GPUs, let's say for maybe DaVinci Resolve, 3D Studio Max, science and simulation, for AI modeling, things like that, you can actually fit 2 GPUs on here, right? Where all the other motherboards, they might have a secondary slot, but that slot isn't wired to be able to go up to high speed by 8 base interconnects, which could also be favorable if you want to run specialized add-in cards as well. So there is going to be a lot of similarity, but there will be some key differences as well, also in items like the dual connectors, right? Where this one's got the dual USB-C, and it also has the dual front 3 USB 3 headers, right? On the SimSAS. So those are going to be some of the key differentials between them two, but we'll also take a look at the IO and note that. Yes, I did note that is that it does have 10G. So I said that in the very beginning. If you do find that the 10G is valuable to you, then you can do that. But of course, you could add 10G in add-in card, right? If you wanted to be able to leverage 10G on the motherboard side, right? Okay. So give me 1 second here. All right, so that's going to give us the Hero right there. All right, and give me 1 second, and I think that is going to be, let me just finish recapping from, if I got everything from the Hero, right, going up from the Strix, right? So we talked about, you have the higher end VRM, you have the polymo lighting design, you have the dual by 8 slot layout design, you have the SimSAS, you have the dual LAN, the higher wattage USB-C, right? The Supreme Effects isolated audio design with the ESS Saber DAC. On the software side, there's also differential. The Supreme Effects, the Hero is also going to come with a 1-year licensed version of our AV software, and you're also going to get a 1-year licensed version of ADA64. And it also comes with the USB flash drive. So the drivers are actually stored on a flash drive on this model as well. And then the dual USB-C headers and the USB 3 legacy headers. So those are all going to be kind of differences on the Hero versus something like the Dash E, and the differential dye-sense voltage monitoring as well. So that is also going to be another difference, the differential dye-sense voltage monitoring. All right, so let's go lastly here on the ProArt, and then we're going to go into our demos, and we'll then pretty much be getting ready to wrap things up. But we're getting close to the end here, guys. But definitely, we've got some cool stuff in the demo. So if you guys are still tuned, I appreciate it. We are going to be showing off the new HD UEFI BIOS. We're going to show the Q dashboard. We're going to show a cool element on the Q on the AI networking side, and a couple of other things that we have there on the demo side. So still some good stuff for you guys if you want to check that guys out. But we are wrapping out at least the last board here within the lineup, which is going to be the ProArt. So, but I am going to give you guys a little bit of teaser on the X870i, the gaming, the mini ITX board, right? But look at that beautiful ProArt board. It just looks so stunning. There's no RGB lighting. I don't need to connect anything to it because there is no lighting on this ProArt model. So it is a fantastic looking board in that respect. So give me 1 second here. And we will bring in the creator. Okay. And the creator does come in at a lower price point compared to the Hero. So it's actually also positioned below the price point of the Dash E. So if we did a recap, the Prime is coming in at $250, the TUF Gaming is coming in at $310, the Dash E comes in at $370, the Dash E comes in at $499, the Hero comes in at $699, and then the creator is going to be coming in at $479.99. And I would say the most immediate things that really are going to jump out to the creator is going to be the dual PCI Express layout. So again, optimally designed for 2 GPUs for heavier workflow or content creation, modeling, AI inferencing, things like that. When you take a look at the back is going to be stacked as well. So it's going to have 3 USB-C and then all 10 gigabits along with 10 gigabit LAN plus 2.5 gig. Plus it also has out of band management controls, which is going to be pretty cool. You're also on this model going to get the nice upgraded kind of dual contact design that we're going to get on the other ones, but we'll show that when we get into a little bit kind of the visual tour. But let's kind of just show that right there. And we'll bring up the image here. So give me 1 second. Where do we have? Okay. All right, here we go. So here we can see we've got the ProArt Creator Wi-Fi. So you got that really nice, clean, just Angular design language that we have there. Just a little bit of that gold accenting, which just gives it that nice kind of refined, elevated sensibility. You're going to see on this board that, again, that dual by 8 slot layout. So that works really well for, 4070 Super, 4070 Ti, 4080 Super, right? Or even if you were to go water cooling, dual 4090s. 7900 XT, XTX, GRE could also be in the dual GPU configuration as long as the card meets within that 2.5 slot envelope design, like what our ProArt series graphics cards do, 2.5 slot. Our Prime series graphics cards are also many 2.5 slot, and many of our dual models are 2.5 slot. So they would all be supported within that configuration. When you also look at the rear I/O, this board is going to be quite nice in terms of that. We have added in clear CMOS to this board as well. So in that respect, it's pretty much equal to what we start on the Dash A, because that also gets clear CMOS. So you have 40 gig, 20 gig. So 40, 40, 20. And then you've got 10 type A's, 10 gigabit ports, 3 of them type A, 3 more 10 gig type A ports. So that's 6. 2, that's going to be 8, and that's going to be 10, and that's going to be 11, right? So literally just one legacy USB 2.0 port along with 7 type A ports, which are 10 gig, 20 gig for USB-C, and then dual 40 gig, right? This one will also give you some additional flexibility in terms of some pass-through functionality, 10G support. This also supports ASUS Control Center Express, which is a great utility, would actually allow you to actually have kind of external access to the board. So let's say maybe you're leaving it doing rendering and then you want to be able to connect to the system, be able to check uptime information, be able to do different types of management options. You can do that through the ASUS Control Center Express software, because that is part of kind of our ProArt focus in terms of giving kind of advanced monitoring and management functionality. And then Wi-Fi 7, which is also going to be on this board. So we're going to throw it down here, put it under the secondary camera, take a closer look, and we will go from there. So how many M.2? Sorry, I can't have to see what your exact question is that you're noting there. Okay, bringing this in right here. Give me 1 second. And so how many M.2? So in terms of the M.2 for this board, as long as you don't use this secondary slot. So let me go over here. And there we go. Oh, sorry guys. Give me 1 second there. Okay, so here we go from the top. As long as you don't use this secondary slot, all of the M.2 can be essentially utilized. So there's no sharing in that respect, okay? So going from the top here on the board, you can see you've got your 2 ProCool power connectors on here. This board is also going to have a higher grade of caps than, let's say, the more entry-level boards. Very robust power delivery system. Again, doesn't matter which CPU you run, whether stock or overclocked, any 7000 series, any 9000 series, it's going to be available to you. You're going to have your CPU OPT and your CPU primary, along with your AIO pump header, ARGB header that's going to be on here. You've got that USB-C that's going to be on there. Keep in mind, it doesn't have the high wattage support like what we had on the Hero-based motherboard. Another fan header right there, legacy USB 3, SATA ports that are going to be on there. 2 more SATA ports that are on there. Going to also then have a chassis fan header. You're going to have 3 USB 2 ports. So down here at the very bottom, 3 ports is going to be just like the Dash E. That's fantastic if you essentially have a high need for different types of internal types of controllers. 2 more ARGB headers, so that's going to be a total of 3. Another fan header right there, and then also a COM port. Now, when we take a look at the actual M.2 base configuration, this one is going to be just like the others. It's going to have the easy latch design. It's also going to have the easy Q latch design, Q release design, excuse me, for the graphics card. Dual contact design for those M.2 SSDs. And then you can see one M.2 SSD here, another M.2 SSD here, and another M.2 SSD there. And when we take a look at this configuration, if we remember on some of the other motherboards, one of the key difference is going to be the level of dual contact headers. They're going to be on motherboards. Sorry, I need to get one more here. Okay, there we go. All right, and so if you take a look right here, right, so 1 M.2, 2 M.2, 3 M.2, 4 M.2, right? So that's where you're going to notice that there's also another difference, right? So you got 4, right? But take, for instance, like on the, excuse me, on the Dash E and on the Hero, you're going to have 5, right? So 1 and 2, 3, and then 4. Now, all of these have the Q latch design, but keep in mind this one is going to have 1 dual contact, right? Versus where even again, if we took a look at the Hero, excuse me, the Dash E or the Hero, remember that we have 3 dual contact. So 1 dual contact, 2 dual contact, and 3 dual contact, right? So there's going to be more dual contact. Now, that's not really critical. Again, you can use the drives in there with no issues. You still have a thermal, you have essentially a heat dissipation. You have a heat sink that's going to be there. But for the fastest drives, if they're under sustained heavy load, they're doing a lot of use case, then there can be that benefit to that dual contact based design. So that is just something to kind of be mindful of in that respect. But you do, again, have 1 primary dual contact. This would ideally be suited if you're going to be running like a Gen 5 for your operating system and your primary applications. And then we would assume like your secondary drives would probably be used more for general storage purposes, maybe scratch disk volumes, things along those lines. Okay. You see right here. Let me quickly see. Will the number of M.2 affect PCI speeds? No. Again, as I noted here, there's no sharing on this one unless you use this slot right here. So if you're not using this by 8 slot, which for most people, they're not going to generally use this by 8 slot, then all your M.2 SSDs are unaffected. You can pretty much run those as you want, right? No, Shad, I have not yet. Let's see, depends on the board. Yeah, so overall, that gives you kind of pretty much the rundown in terms of pretty much all of these active, of the layout configuration that you have here on the board. And I already went over in terms of the rear backplane on this board as well, so on the IO side. So that's going to get us covered for pretty much the creator board. So I'm now going to get ready to go into the demo here, guys, and we'll pretty much wrap things up coming out of the demo, and I'll at the end give it just a little bit of a touch on the X870-I gaming, but we'll have something a little bit kind of targeted specifically for that board once it actually MPIs or essentially comes to market. It'll be part of our second wave in the not too distant future. Okay, so again, this is going to be the X870-E creator Wi-Fi, and that's going to be $479. So again, a recap here is the Dash P is $249. 310, 250, 310, 370, 500, and then 700, right? Okay, and then the creator is going to be 480. So let me go ahead and get my little demo system over here. I've got to kind of bring it in a little bit closer, guys. And if anybody has any other questions, feel free and let me know. All right. All right, so we're going to get ready to go in here. Do you know why the X? It's just that's actually what we normally do. The F is not normally usually always a channel wide model, so we usually always have that as kind of like a model that is more focused at certain channels in terms of what we call kind of distribution, right? And so we generally always have models like that, that some models might be more common within one distribution. Doesn't mean that it won't be available. It just might be that it might be more targeted kind of certain channel partners. So again, that could be like the ASUS store, could be at Micro Center. So that is just something to be mindful of. Oh, yeah. So somebody wants to go here. Can you go over the differences between the F and the A? Sure. So I'll do that before I go into the to the demo. So let me actually do that because I know some people have actually asked about the dash F. So that's no problem. Let me do that. Give me 1 second here. And you guys, again, remember, check out the spec sheet chart. The spec sheet chart has the full kind of breakdown on everything. But we'll do this right here, and this should kind of give you the breakdown here for at least a pretty good breakdown of it. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. So here we can see we have the E and we have the F, right? And here we have the A, but for some people, I think they probably wouldn't look at the A because the A is going to be white, right? So generally, if you're looking at the F, it's because you're probably looking at something closer to the dash A, and because it's black. So again, we can see in terms of the VRM design, again, there's going to be a difference, right? The dash E is going to have a higher VRM, but as I noted, it doesn't matter. Even the dash P, the VRMs are going to be performant, stable, and reliable. Will run any CPU you want, stock or overclock or performance tuned, right? You're going to see they all have that PCI Express Gen 5. We talked about this at the very beginning with the minimum spec on every single motherboard, right? They're all going to have Gen 5 M.2 SSD support, but you can see this one has 3 M.2 SSDs versus this one is going to be 2 M.2 SSDs, right? When you take a look at the total, right, this is going to be 4. So it's just like the dash A versus this one being 5, right? So that is going to be also the other difference, right? So if you notice here at the front, the dash E has that 4 USB-C in the rear, right? It has 13 ports in the rear. So it pretty much has the whole stack, right? 40 gig, 20 gig, and 10 gig. If you notice here, only that 20 gig is only on the front, but that's okay because a lot of people, that's where they might be utilizing maybe that 20 gigabit is going to be in that front USB-C connector, right? That USB 3 power delivery is going to be the same. Remember, the Hero is the only one that has that higher wattage power delivery, right? Where you can do essentially more than even 30 watts. So the power delivery support on that front connector is going to be 30 watts. The E is going to give you the 5 gig versus the 2.5. So that's going to be twice as fast. Beneficial if maybe you have something like a NAS or maybe you're doing more kind of home LAN-based configurations, right? Wi-Fi 7 is going to be the same. The audio chip is going to be the same. The software suite is going to be the same. Fan header is going to be the same. They both have the microcontroller that's going to be on the board that enables the AIOC functionality that we're going to talk about here and some really cool stuff that gives you. That's going to be identical between the two. The Nitro Path technology, remember, that is exclusive to the Dash E into the Hero. So that is that optimized DRAM physical topology design, right? That is exclusive to the Dash E, not on the Dash F, not on the Dash A, not on TUF Gaming, not on ProArt, only on Dash E and on the Hero. They both have the same quick release, easy release mechanism for the graphics card. So that's going to be the Q release, Q latch, and then you see the rest is pretty much identical. So for the most part, they're going to be very, very close overall and really kind of the core experience. So unless you really kind of, I would say, want Nitro Path, even more rear speed USB ports, right, and more PCI Express Gen 5, and that 5 gig, right, you know, the Dash F is going to be a fantastic choice for a lot of you because it's really going to give you a great foundation, right? So it just comes down to whether you kind of really want to level up really kind of all of those things, right? More USB, more M.2, higher speed networking, right? You know, all of those little items, right? So those are going to be some of the differentiations. Also, keep in mind the debug as well. The debug is a differential that is not listed on there, but that is also going to be a difference. And it's also not listed on there, but let me check here. I do think as well that is going to be a difference. Give me 1 second. Is keep in mind that also the Dash F is X870. It is not going to be X670E. So there's going to be a little bit of difference in terms of the potential lane sharing, because remember, E gives you 2 chipsets, right? So there's going to be a difference there. One other difference too that is not in that sheet, but I did want to note there is going to be, remember on the USB ports on that Dash E has 3 internal USB 2 headers, right? This board, like the other ones, has 2 internal USB 2 headers, okay? So 2 USB 2 headers versus on the Dash E, you get 3 internal USB headers. And also, it's not on that chart, but by comparison, this also has a less kind of performant heatsink assembly for that Gen 5 M.2 SSD. It's even much more robust on the Dash E. So again, even lower operating temperature. So for maybe some of those next generation Gen 5 drives that are going to be in that like 14 gigabyte class of performance, you're going to even get better thermal dissipation performance, especially when they're heavily under load, okay? ITX is going to come at the very end. I'm going to do that after the demo since we're running a little bit behind here. Okay. All right. I definitely agree with Justin. Working on my ProArt Noctua to do definitely one of the most underrated boards. I would agree. It's a fantastic choice within that. Right. All right. Okay. So give me 1 sec here. Does any X670 board have bandwidth sharing between NVMe and PCIe? Yeah, so yes, as I noted, right, it just depends on what you're looking. So like the Creator TIC, for instance, does, but only if you use that secondary PCIe slot, right? For the majority of people, they're not using that secondary PCIe slot, right? So you just have to look essentially at the topology map, right, breakdown. So if you take a look at storage, take for instance, it'll show you if it has the little asterisk, the asterisk right there, take for instance would note and tell you if that's shared. So it tells you, take for instance, that M.2 slot is shared with that slot right there, right? Now this is also going to be hopefully even clearer when we show you the Q dashboard functionality, but you can always look at that information when you take a look at the that breakdown information specifically on the storage, and you would look for the asterisk, and the asterisk would let you know that, right? So again, in most situations, you're never going to run a situation where your M.2 is going to be shared with your PCIe. But if you run that secondary slot, which again, on the Hero or on the Creator is there kind of as a specialized feature for a specialized audience, right? So those audiences that are running dual GPUs, right? So just kind of be mindful of that, right? Is that depending on that configuration, that can influence that. But if you're, but the majority of people are going to do, which is just run the one single GPU and then stack out drives, you're generally not going to run into an issue. Okay. All right. All right. So let me bring over here my demo. I'm going to see if I can get it over here, guys. All right. I'm going to have to get my power supply just about right. I think that should be close enough for me to get it. You guys don't really need to see it too much there physically, the system, because what's most important is just going to be the demo. So let me connect this system. We'll power it on and we'll go from there. All right, give me 1 second here, guys. And we got power, and now I just need to connect my HDMI. All right, let's go. Okay, and let's double check. We're all right. Okay, if everybody can see, hopefully the UEFI. I might maybe try to see, maybe if I can move it down here to the corner. Is that better for everybody? Hopefully everybody can kind of see everything there, right? So the first thing you're going to see here within the UEFI environment, right, is going to be so this is going to be a really cool one, guys, where you can see now that the ASUS UEFI now in full HD, so it's in actually full high definition, so it's going to be a sharper, clearer overall presentation. I absolutely love that we finally now have it in HD, so this is going to be pretty cool. No, there's not going to be any other TUF Gaming motherboard, just the TUF Gaming that we noted on here. So if you want to step into the higher end series, then it would be just the models that we noted on. Okay, Tora? Yes, so you can see here we have the HD based UEFI. So the first thing I want to note within the HD UEFI is also going to be that when we go into the advanced mode interface, there's going to be some advantages to this advanced mode interface. So we're going to head into here first, and one of the cool things you're going to see now is going to be that we have some improvements in terms of Fan Expert, which Fan Expert, or Q Fan as we call it within the UEFI, is going to be now enhanced. So let's go ahead and take a look here. Sorry, that's actually a little bit of a typo on my side. Apology. Right, so we have the Fan Expert improvements. So normally right here, you can see that we do have of course, the CPU fan controls, right? And you can see right here that you have the Q fan. You have all your readout information. So very, very easy to see, of course, all your standard information. So the UEFI version, you can see your DRAM. If you wanted to quickly enable your XMP, right, your Expo, your DOCP, you could do that right there. You have your real-time readout for your CPU temperature, your voltage, and here your corresponding performance tuning. But if you go into QFan control, one of the cool updates that we've gone ahead and made is now with the HD BIOS, you now have more kind of visual space for things to be more legibly laid out. And there's also been some improvements in terms of the actual granularity and control. So we actually have now significantly more points that can be mapped for the actual manual fan tuning profile. So let me go ahead and just actually run this. So if you guys weren't aware, one of the cool things that you have the flexibility to do is you can go into the UEFI BIOS, and for any fan header that's connected to either the CPU headers or to the chassis fan headers, we'll run a calibration and profiling to those fans, essentially figuring out what their minimum and their maximum RPM speed is. And then from there, now they're fully controllable and can be tuned directly in the firmware. This means you don't have to do any tuning or any software within the operating system environment. Some people prefer to do it within the OS environment. I think it's very easy and very simple. But if you don't want to spend any time within the OS and you just want to do it all, quote unquote, from that BIOS or from that hardware level, you can do that all inside the UEFI within the QFan tuning environment. And you'll see that once we actually have the readout of the information, the cool thing is that we actually now have much more granularity in terms of actually the number of points that you can make adjustments within. So in the past, we had I'd say a reasonable level of tuning, but it wasn't as granular as some people were hoping to have. And so now you actually have much more granularity in terms of being able to tune your fan curve in relation to what's going to work best for you, not only relative to performance, but relative to noise. So we can see here, it gives us the corresponding values. Now I only have my primary CPU cooling solution. I don't have my other fans connected, but you can now see that we have a much bigger gradient, right? In terms of what can be. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Then 8. So you can see that there's far more actually points that are now available in terms of the granularity, right? So a lot of nice options available to you. Let me go ahead and add my RGB here, guys, just to have my fan be active. My little cable got disconnected right there. So I'm going to go ahead and just add that in there for fun. Okay, so I've got my RGB lighting in there. So you can see that you've got more granularity and control, and you can then also go in and change your input sources. Now, keep in mind, if you go over here to, like, let's say the chassis, you can set up the step up and the step down. So that's going to be kind of the fan ramping policy. You can also go into the CPU source. You can see here for the CPU source that you also maintain all the options that you would normally have. So CPU, motherboard, VRM, T sensor, that's going to be the optional temp sensor. Now, one thing that we still don't have here within the UEFI that is present within the operating system is that you can do GPU temperature input mapping within the operating system. And that's because when the driver is present, we can understand that the GPU is now a source that we can leverage temperature data from. So do keep in mind that these same control points would be available to you if you did Fan Expert within the operating system. And you would also have all of these values, but you would also have one more with the GPU, where you could do the temperature responding to the actual GPU, which in many times is actually favorable. So that is going to be that option. Now, from there, let's go ahead and go into the next one. And this one's going to be a pretty cool option. Hi, Connor. Happy to have you here on the stream, man. Thanks for joining us on the stream. This is going to be a really great one, and this is going to be Q Dashboard. Okay, so I know for many of you, you've probably been in a situation that you wish that you could try to kind of visually see how the motherboard is working, right? And so with Q Dashboard, now what we can do is I actually have this saved under my favorites. So if many of you aren't aware, this is one of the best features of our UEFI BIOS that many users don't use, but I actually customize a home page that has all my favorite settings on it. So we've had this for literally more than a decade, but instead of having to go into sub menus, you can literally have all your favorite settings just on one single page. So you can see here I have everything from my overclock tuner to memory frequency to of course, the Infinity Fabric, multipliers, my VRM tuning, my voltage type that I want to have, PBO if I want to enable different PBO parameters, right? All of these are in there. My Q fan is also enabled there, right? And you can see here also Core Flex and AI-centric features, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But the Q Dashboard, you can see now here if I launch it, it is quite cool. And now I'm going to move my picture-in-picture up here a moment. But you'll see that you actually have these little filters where it says all USB, SATA, M.2, PCIe. And so what this actually shows you is a real-time map essentially of all the devices that are connected to your system currently. And you can see right here that I have one M.2 actually installed, right? And you can also see that I also have a graphics card also installed, right? And here's my memory, here's my fans, right? All of these devices are registered that actually have a green dot. So in real time, it actually lets you know what is going on with your system. The cool thing as well is that you have more information in terms of, you can also visually save this. So let's say you wanted to share this with somebody in the community, or maybe you also wanted to maybe share this with like service and support or something like that. If I go ahead back out and I reload in here, I have actually a flash drive. If I do F12, you can actually see that you can store actually directly to a flash drive. You can do screenshots of the UEFI BIOS environment inside there. So I find that that's really cool in terms of that functionality, right, that you have available. You can see that we captured that in real time, right? So that allows you to go ahead and save that information. The other cool part too is that if you want to dive directly into a portion of the UEFI for these control parameters, you don't actually have to know where that section is at. So you can directly click on something like the fan, and you could see how it just takes me directly there to the fan controls, right? Or something like the M.2, if I go here and let's say, oh, maybe I want to be able to make sure that my link speeds are set correctly. If I go to the M.2, you can see right there, it takes me to the link mode speed, and actually I could force set the link mode speed to a certain value. So it makes actually the navigation significantly easier in terms of ultimately getting you exactly where you need to go. You can see everything that you have connected, what's going on with your system. So it makes it a lot more intuitive, right? So so overall, I think it is a really great option that we have here within the Q dashboard environment. And it's a great option that we've now integrated in along with this new update to the UEFI BIOS for our latest generation of motherboards. So overall, hopefully you guys will find this feature and function beneficial and useful. We'd love to also have your feedback in terms of whether there's further enhancements that we can make to this, but we do definitely think that this is going to be a compelling value add to a lot of people at just helping them better understand exactly what's going on with their system, what they have connected, and how they can best dive into the menus for those corresponding headers or those slots so that they can make adjustments very easily. Okay, so another item that I want to talk about here is going to be understanding the values benefits of ASUS AIOC. So I know a lot of you have maybe heard about this in the past on other motherboards, but keep in mind AIOC, for any motherboard that reports having it on there, it does really provide you a huge value because there's a hardware microcontroller on the motherboard that allows you to have a lot of really cool and interesting information available to you. So one example of this is that if when we go here into the AI features, the first thing that you're actually going to be able to see within the ASUS AIOC is going to be actually a readout of information respective to the vid table for your CPU. So you're going to be able to see actually the corresponding frequency and the vid table, and actually even an assessment of kind of the nature, the characteristic of your CPU. That is what's going to be called your SP score. There are some CPUs that are a little bit more leaky, some that are a little bit less leaky. So essentially some that have better boost behavior, some that have a little bit less boost behavior. This is normal in terms of just variance from one CPU to another CPU. But this allows you to kind of get a sense of how performant that CPU is in relation to its frequency and to its voltage. Now, there's some other really cool things that are available to you also here. Now, if you enable ASUS AIC, if you notice here, we have this curve optimizer. Now, new for this generation, you not only have curve optimizer, but you also have curve shaper, which is going to be much more granular, which actually allows you to have 5 frequency targets and 3 temperature targets that you can define for far more granularity at really being able to define in essentially a performance tuning target. But a lot of people can kind of sometimes get confused about what's a good value to start with. So if you enable ASUS AIOC, what it does is it looks at the CPU quality and then also looks at your CPU cooler score. And based on a combination of those, will actually create a tuning profile for you that you could either use by default or that you could essentially use as a working baseline to further customize. But the big benefit is because we've tested hundreds of CPU configurations and it's also specific to your cooling score, it is actually aligning really that performance tuning value with what's best for your system in a way that if you just sometimes randomly pull something from somebody that's shared on an internet, on a forum, on a YouTube video, they could have a different CPU in terms of the quality, a different cooling performance, right? So there could be other variables you're not accounting for. What I also really love is going to be some other things that you can read out here, which is going to be processor utilization. So this is really, really, really cool. With processor utilization, you can actually have a real-time assessment of your CPU. So you can see right here, I've been running this CPU now for 30 hours, right? And I actually have an aggregate level of the voltage, the current, the temperature, the energy, and even the average voltage. So sometimes some people, they will just objectively say that they have voltage that reaches a peak, and they use that as an assessment of the totality of the experience. But it's not really a good way to measure the totality of what your CPU is going through. The cool thing is here is that we're tracking that from the moment the system posts through its entire use case scenario. So this is very difficult for you to do because unless you're going to open up a utility every single time you run your system, from the moment that you're idling to whenever you're under load, you can't actually really create a true average of what you're running. But you could actually look at this every month and you could actually see what your average of voltage is over the lifetime of your actual part. And so this is pretty interesting in terms of being able to have you feel more confident in terms of the target voltage that's being supplied over a period of time. So you could kind of go after 6 months and you can see the actual average voltage that's being given to my CPU, regardless of what's in the VF curve, is only about 1.25 or something like that. So this is really cool that, again, you have that data available to you. And you can also see that you can also track the overall target temperature. So this is really, really, really cool, really powerful. And again, only possible because we have that dedicated microcontroller on the motherboard that is helping us to log all of that data, right? And when you also go about enabling the AIOC option, which you can see right here, if I go to F11, right, and I want to enable ASUS IC, it gives me a lot of different information on being able to do the tuning, understanding what's going on with the system, when it actually goes about the overclocking, right? All that information is giving to you. One of the cool things is you can actually adjust a optimism scale. So if you want to make the algorithm a little bit more conservative, you can do that. If you want to make it more aggressive, you can also do that. So let's say maybe you dialed in a value and maybe you did get instability. Generally in our situation, in our testing, we find that probably 85% of cases is going to be stable, if not maybe even more than that. But let's say you were in a situation where it's not stable. Instead of you having to figure out, what do I adjust? Do I adjust this parameter, this load line, this scalar, whatever these different settings might be that I might not be as familiar with? All I need to do is take that one primary kind of knob and pull it back. So I can go and I can set like 95, or I can set 90, right? I can set 90. Or the inverse is also true. Maybe I want to try to see if I can push for a little bit more. Then I can actually go to like 105 versus it being at 100. So it gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of granularity in terms of how you can target and kind of really tune your system. So I really love the flexibility that this AIOC's functionality gives you, that again, you just don't see within a lot of other, well, really, there's no other board on the market that's going to give you this functionality, right? Because they don't offer our dedicated microcontroller and they don't give you this functionality. So this is going to be really some of the really cool things that you have available to you within the ASUS AIOC environment. Some of the other cool things that you're going to also still have is you have your CoreFlex technology, which allows you to go in and set an algorithm. There's also a specific one that we already have defined for X3D series parts. But you can go in and you can do essentially balancing, where this actually can take 3 different data points and allows you to actually really tune in how the actual adjustment works. This is a little bit similar to somewhat of what Curve Shaper has actually been implemented for, but this was previously defined by us, and you can see that we give you some interesting kind of parameters that you can go in and you can dial a little bit more kind of comprehensively, right? So one other item too that I want to note as well is that for PBO, now if you do enable ASUS AIOC, it is going to be pretty comparable to pretty much enabling PBO, but with the benefit that it's tuned specific to the board, also accounting for your CPU and for your cooling performance, where PBO is you're guessing what you think are going to be the right values in relation to the CPU, to the cooler, to the board, right? So I would strongly recommend enabling AIOC versus just manually engaging PBO. But if you did want to do that, we actually have optimized PBO presets that we've tuned specific to the board that also have a temperature target. So if you go to this enhancement mode, you can select this enhancement mode, and you can actually pick a target enhancement temperature target. And so this will define everything in relation to having that be the peak temperature that actually the system work towards. So 90C, 80C, or 70C. Generally with 90 or 80, you'll generally will have even higher performance than what you would have by default, let's say stock without enabling PBO, right? 90 being the highest level of performance. 70 will get you down to where it'll be cooler. It'll even be a little bit more efficient in terms of power, but it'll sacrifice a little bit of performance. But again, the cool thing is in here is that ultimately you can dial this in and kind of figure out what it is that you want to, right? Do you want to tune in for this kind of temperature target, or do you rather tune in for another temperature target, right? So sorry, somebody was asking here a question. So does the motherboards, so not all motherboards have the ASUS AIOC functionality. You have to have the microcontroller based on board, but all the ROG motherboards have it. But take, for instance, like the Prime series doesn't have it, but all the motherboards do have the HD UEFI. They all have the Q dashboard functionality, but you do want to look at the product page of the model to see if it says essentially says ASUS AIOC. if you want essentially these kind of specific options. PBO enhancement though, PBO enhancement is on all the motherboards, so it is not limited to any of the motherboards. But the AIOC stuff that I just mentioned, that is going to be specific to that, right? Can AIOC be saved to USB drive? Well, you can save screenshots. Again, anything that you define in here, you can ultimately do F12 and you can save that to a screenshot. So if essentially it's a toggle option that you see there, you can save that information and have it be available to you. If then you also wanted more granular readout to the parameters that are being tuned, you could also go into something like Ryzen Master afterwards and then be able to see kind of all the dump out in terms of all the customizations if you then wanted to be able to use as a baseline parameter, right? So the PBO enhancement is going to be another item there that you would want to, I think, probably keep in mind. Also, keep in mind that for the boards that do offer it, right, there are going to be boards that do have an asynchronous based clock. And so the asynchronous based clock will allow for a decoupling that will allow you to actually have adjustments to essentially using a bus clock that will allow you to actually have a little bit higher frequencies, right? Because instead of keeping it, let's say at 100, you could do something like 106 multiplied against your multiplier. But not all the boards will have an asynchronous clock configuration. But like all the ROG STRIX models, the ROG Hero does have an asynchronous clock. Also, the ROG STRIX-I has an asynchronous clock as well. So that's another kind of cool functionality there. So those are just some of the cool options that I wanted to note on here. I'm going to lastly just go into the operating system and show you a couple of little quick updates, a demo for the networking, and we're going to wrap things up, guys. So I want to thank everybody for joining me today in today's stream. We're pretty much going to be done in about 10 minutes here, guys. So as always, if you guys have any more questions or comments, feel free to drop them in right now. I'll try to answer them if I can before we wrap things out. But if not, you can make sure to definitely go ahead and join our, you can join our ASUS PC DIY community, where you can ask other members of the community as well as ASUS staff that are there. I'm there sometimes along with Lee Meisner, our community manager, where we can help to provide you insight in terms of our features, functions, spec, and all kinds of stuff like that. Right. Okay, so we're just booting up here into the operating system. Give me a second, guys. All right, yeah, we're loading in there. Okay, we're in the OS environment. So one of the other updates that I wanted to touch on, guys, as many of you guys are aware of Armory Crate, we're actually going to have a very big milestone release that will be released in the not too distant future with Armory Crate version 6. There will be some really cool updates, but I'm not going to touch on those yet because it's not yet ready to release, but it'll be coming up in early Q4. But one big difference for these X870 based motherboards is going to be the inclusion of what we call Driver Hub. So Driver Hub is very, very tiny. The actual installer is, I think, less than 10 megabytes. It's a very tiny application. So when you actually first to go set up your system, you'll be prompted to install Driver Hub. It will automatically install your LAN driver so you can get connected on the internet. But the cool thing about Driver Hub, the way it works is it will just pretty much open and give you a full web-based interface that's very easy to access, very lightweight, to be able to check out the drivers for your corresponding system as well as the utilities. So you can see right here, it'll actually give you your system installation history, everything that you've gone ahead and installed. Here's your updates. It tells me, hey, I've got ADA64, CPU-Z, EST security, AV software, Rare Lab, right? Then you can also go, of course, and you can check your primary devices and drivers if there was any corresponding updates. Individual kits would include individual pieces of software that we would also have. And then settings is you can also enable it to automatically notify you. Now, this is going to be where we're kind of migrating drivers moving forward away from AC, although you also will have some redundancy available to you for a little bit of period of time within AC where you still can go in the utility module and check there. But as we move forward, Driver Hub will kind of take ownership of that. The My ASUS app, which is designed generally for service and support coordination, also can still be a stopgap for also driver visibility and UEFI BIOS updates. But this is one update that I did want to show here in terms of Driver Hub. So let me go ahead and load up the last item here that I want to show you guys, which is going to be, hopefully this will work. All right, I'm gonna put my antenna right here. So this is for that. Um, I've got a router right here that I'm gonna connect. This is actually an older Wi-Fi 5 tri-band router. This will work really, really well if you have an ASUS Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7, or a Wi-Fi 7 based router. But I want to show you guys some of the cool things that we've done here for the AI networking technologies. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this guy on here, turn a signal on. Now, while that router boots up, the thing that I want to actually show you here is if we go into AC, let's get our Aura sync on. So let me actually get my sync on here. Get these all synchronized. All right, perfect, good. I got all my synchronized there. I got my little gradient. All right, and what I actually want to show you here is we're going to go to the motherboard, and once we go into the motherboard, there's actually a really cool option that we have here that's called Q antenna. And with the Q antenna, you're actually going to have a couple of different really cool options available to you, right? So if you've ever essentially had kind of any issues with your networking, what you can ultimately do is be able to have essentially more flexibility to be able to kind of figure out what's going on. So the first one is really simple with fast check, where essentially you can click this start button. And once you click on the start button, it will immediately help to actually bring up RSSI information. So essentially helping to figure out the signal strength. And what you can quickly kind of do is you can start to make an adjustment, but it can go through actually a structured fashion for you here with the direction finder, where it'll actually go through step by step to help to actually log the data and check the data for you as you actually rotate it in a fixed position to figure out, hey, what's the best option, right? Should you actually be turning it? Should you be holding it there? Should you be moving it, right, to figure out ultimately what's going to be the best performance for you? As some people sometimes aren't aware that the location could maybe increase by a 10 dB or whatever it might be, helping you to get lower latency and higher speed and over a higher throughput. So here there's a kind of systematic structured way that we help to assess the overall environment and then help you to kind of set up your unit physically based in that configuration. Now, another really cool option is going to be actually here in this traffic monitor option. And hopefully if my router is up and running here, you'll be able to do this. But I'm going to go over here and I'm going to connect actually to my other router. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to connect to this router. And this can actually work with a non-ASUS router, but if it does pair with an ASUS router, we can actually automatically make changes to that router dynamically for you, which is pretty cool. So you'll actually see right here that we are picking up real-time channel information, figuring out what's going on with these channels. You can see this router actually has 3 bands associated with it. Let me go ahead and see if I can remember this login information. It should hopefully be the right login information. And when I run the actual test demo, the cool part that happens here is essentially that the system will allow you to dynamically switch from one channel to another channel when it senses that it's actually being overutilized. So if you find that actually maybe you're getting a slowdown in performance, but you're not really sure what you should be doing, it can actually be monitoring this information, present you with the option to actually change the channel, then to be able to actually maintain better performance. So it is a really nice functionality. And this is, again, going to be tied in already with any one of the units that we talked about today, because they all come with not only Wi-Fi 7, but they all come with our networking software. So I'm opening up here my secondary laptop that I have, and I'm going to go onto the network, and essentially I'm going to go through a storage transfer test. I'm going to transfer a pretty big file to this and see if I can't saturate it and get it to illuminate. So let's see if I can get this to work. So we're going to go over to my network here. Okay, and let me see here. Okay, and hopefully I should now have this in here in a second. And once I essentially, hopefully start this transfer over here, then I will be able to go ahead and transfer over this information, excuse me, transfer over this file, but be able to saturate the network so that I can get it to identify this. So give me one sec here. Okay, that should be good on that side, guys. Okay, connected here. And so Michael's asking a question. So can you use this on previous gen boards? So no. So this AI networking feature is exclusive to the newer generation of motherboards, but it will work with a variation of different routers. So the cool thing is here, as I'm using it with one of our older, kind of like I said, it's an AC ASUS router, tri-band router. So it can work with different routers. You don't have to have even a Wi-Fi 7 router. So the benefits of what I've showed you can work with if you have a Wi-Fi 7 router, Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 6, even Wi-Fi 5, right? But of course, the best performance experience will come if, at least I would recommend you having Wi-Fi 6 to Wi-Fi 6E to Wi-Fi 7, right? So, but if memory serves, I think Michael, you have Wi-Fi, I think Wi-Fi 7, right? So Eddie goes, yes. So if you actually have a TP, you have essentially a competitor's router, you can actually still benefit from this functionality. We just can't make some of the direct level changes directly, but you can still do things like the directional finder, the fast check functionality, many other elements, including also our game first software. All of that stuff will still work. It'll work with any networking product. So a lot of the really cool features will actually still work universally. You're not necessarily limited in that respect. Okay, so let's see here, guys. Transferring over the file. Sorry, I had to connect to the second network. So now we're going to see here. Essentially, you can see this real-time graph. We're going to start probably getting a little bit more channel utilization because I'm on this same network and I'm starting to chew up some of the bandwidth. And hopefully in a little bit here, we should see that I should be presented with an option in a little bit to switch the channel here. So I'm going to let it finish transferring over. And that should pretty much, I think, wrap up the majority of, and there you guys can see it right there, the channel switch. So you can see now I could click over to this channel, which would, of course, disconnect me for a moment, but it would allow then me to maintain a much better level of performance and an overall better experience in terms of the latency and the speed and the overall usage. Because you can see right here, my average utilization really shot up. So it's telling me, hey, I should change my network. And so then I could go ahead and click that and then change over to a different network. So that gives you an example of just some of the really cool functionality that we have introduced for these generation of boards, right? So guys, that wraps up our live stream. We've talked about a lot. Stay tuned to the PC DIY YouTube channel here on the ASUS North America YouTube channel. We've got some more videos coming that'll be targeted on just individual models to give you a little bit more clarity, but we'll add timestamps into this. And again, if you have more questions or commentary, make sure to go ahead and check out the ASUS PC DIY community. We're going to have a lot more conversations there, more insights and more guides. And I believe Brian, my team member here, has also shared over our landing page and the product page spec sheet that you can use for comparisons and informations. But hopefully this gets you with a good foundation of understanding the differences between the boards, the feature set, some of the cool stuff that we're doing, and again, why we think that we're offering you the best foundation, that if you're looking to build an AM5 based platform, why we've got you covered with a great series of motherboards that ultimately are going to make things faster, easier, and better when it comes to building your system, regardless of what you're going to be doing, guys. So again, thank you guys for joining us for today's stream. With that, take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your day, and best of luck with your builds. Bye-bye.